The candlemaker's workshop at night. The day is ending now, slowly and without ceremony, the way days always end in the small town where the candlemaker works. The sky beyond the workshop window has begun to change, though the change comes so gradually that it might go unnoticed by someone passing quickly through the streets. But the candlemaker is not passing quickly. The candlemaker is still, standing near the work table, watching the light shift from pale afternoon gold to something softer, something that speaks of evening drawing near. The workshop is a modest place. It stands at the end of a quiet lane where few people walk after the shops have closed. The building is old, made of stone and dark wood that has aged over many years, absorbing the scent of wax and smoke until the walls themselves seem to hold the memory of every candle that has ever been made here. The door is solid and heavy, fitted with iron hinges that make no sound when they move. The windows are small, their glass thick and slightly uneven, so that the world outside appears just a little blurred, just a little removed from the warmth and stillness within. Inside, the air is already beginning to change. The coolness of the day still lingers near the floor and in the corners farthest from the hearth, but warmth is gathering slowly, pooling in the center of the room where the candlemaker stands. The work table is long and sturdy, its surface marked by years of use. Small burns from stray drops of hot wax, shallow grooves worn smooth by countless hours of work, a patina that speaks of patience and repetition. Upon the table rest the tools of the trade, metal molds in various sizes, trimming knives with worn wooden handles, lengths of cotton wick wound carefully on small spools, shallow pans for melting wax, and several unfinished candles waiting to be completed. The candlemaker moves slowly now, reaching for the first of the oil lamps that sit along the edge of the table. The lamp is simple, a small glass reservoir filled with clear oil, a brass fitting that holds the wick, a glass chimney to protect the flame. The candlemaker lifts the chimney with careful fingers, sets it aside, and strikes a match. The scratch of the match against its box is a small sound, a gentle rasp that breaks the silence without disturbing it. The match flares, and a tiny point of light appears, bright and sharp for just a moment before settling into a steady glow. The candlemaker touches the match to the lamp's wick, and the flame catches, climbing slowly up the woven cotton. For a moment, it flickers, uncertain, and then it finds its balance. The flame becomes still, burning with a soft golden light that begins to push back the shadows gathering in the workshop. The candlemaker replaces the glass chimney, and the flame steadies further, protected now, contained. The lamp glows warmly, casting a circle of light across the work table. There are other lamps to light. The candlemaker moves to the next one, and then the next, repeating the same slow ritual. Each match is struck with the same careful attention. Each flame is tended with the same quiet focus. One by one, the lamps come to life, and the workshop begins to fill with a soft, layered light that seems to hold back the approach of night without resisting it. The light does not glare or intrude. It simply exists, warm and steady, inviting rest. Outside, the sky continues to change. The pale gold has deepened now to amber, and the first hint of violet has appeared at the edges of the horizon. The sounds of the town are fading. The last footsteps have passed along the lane. The last door has closed. The voices that filled the afternoon have gone quiet, and the evening settles over the rooftops and cobblestones like a soft blanket, muffling everything, gentling the world. The candlemaker stands for a moment near the window, looking out at the dimming light. There is no hurry in this moment. There is no task that cannot wait. The candlemaker simply stands and watches as the day releases its hold and allows the night to come. The sky is beautiful in its quietness, in the way the colors blend and soften without drama or spectacle. It is the kind of beauty that asks for nothing, that simply offers itself to anyone willing to pause and notice. After a time, the candlemaker turns back to the work table. The evening's work is beginning now, though it does not feel like work in the way that word is sometimes understood. There is no urgency here, no clock to watch, no deadline pressing close. There is only the rhythm of the tasks themselves, the quiet pleasure of familiar motions repeated with care. The candlemaker has done this many times before, so many times that the hands seem to move almost without thought, guided by memory and muscle rather than by conscious decision. The first task is to prepare the wax. There are blocks of it stored on a shelf against the far wall, each block wrapped in paper to keep it clean. The candle maker crosses the room slowly, footsteps soft against the worn wooden floor. The air here is cooler, away from the lamps and the hearth, and there is a pleasant contrast in the temperature, a reminder that the warmth near the work table is something earned, something tended. The candle maker selects a block of wax, feeling its weight, its slight roughness beneath the paper wrapping. It is beeswax, golden and faintly fragrant even before it is warmed. The scent is subtle, sweet but not cloying, with an undertone of honey and wildflowers and summer sun captured and stored within the wax itself. Returning to the work table, the candle maker unwraps the block carefully, folding the paper and setting it aside to be used again. The wax gleams softly in the lamplight, its surface smooth and unmarked. The candle maker reaches for a broad knife and begins to shave thin curls from the block, working slowly and steadily. The knife moves with a gentle, rhythmic motion, and the wax curls away in delicate ribbons that fall softly into a wide metal pan. Each stroke of the knife produces a faint whispering sound, a quiet scraping that becomes almost musical in its repetition. The candle maker continues this way for some time, shaving the wax, watching the curls accumulate in the pan. There is something deeply satisfying in this simple action, in the way the block slowly diminishes while the pan slowly fills. It is a transformation happening at the pace of patience, visible but unhurried. The candle maker's breathing is slow and even, matching the rhythm of the work. There is no thought of time passing or tasks remaining. There is only this, the knife, the wax, the soft accumulation of curls in the pan. When the pan is sufficiently full, the candle maker sets the knife aside and carries the pan to the hearth. The hearth is built into the wall on the far side of the workshop, its stones blackened by years of smoke and heat. A small fire burns there now, not large or roaring, but steady and contained, its flames moving in slow, hypnotic patterns. The candle maker has laid the fire earlier, using dry wood that burns clean and gives off very little smoke. The fire is not meant to heat the entire workshop, only to provide warmth enough for the work, to maintain a gentle temperature that makes the evening comfortable without becoming oppressive. The candle maker places an iron trivet over the coals at the edge of the fire, positioning it carefully so that it sits level and stable. Then the pan of wax shavings is set upon the trivet, balanced so that the heat will reach it evenly. The candle maker kneels beside the hearth for a moment, adjusting the position of the pan, making sure that nothing will tip or shift. The warmth from the fire is pleasant against the skin, a gentle heat that soaks in slowly, easing muscles and quieting thoughts. Now comes the waiting. The wax will take time to melt, and this cannot be hurried. The candle maker knows this well, has learned through years of practice that patience is the most important ingredient in the work. To rush is to risk ruin. Wax that becomes too hot will smoke and discolor, will lose its fragrance and its smooth texture. But wax that is melted slowly with care and attention will retain all its qualities, will pour beautifully and set firmly into whatever shape is given to it. The candle maker rises from beside the hearth and returns to the work table. While the wax melts, there are other tasks to attend to. There are molds to prepare, wicks to cut and measure, surfaces to clean. The candle maker reaches for a stack of metal molds, cylindrical forms in various sizes, each one slightly tapered, so that the finished candle will release easily. The molds are old, their surfaces dulled by use but still perfectly functional. The candle maker wipes each one with a soft cloth, removing any dust or residue from previous use, making sure that the interiors are clean and smooth. The work is methodical, almost meditative. Each mold is handled with the same attention, the same care. The cloth moves in slow circles, polishing the metal until it gleams softly in the lamplight. There is a quiet satisfaction in this preparation, in making ready, in ensuring that everything is as it should be before the next step begins. The candle maker's mind is quiet, thoughts drifting like the shadows on the walls, formless and gentle, requiring nothing. Outside, the last of the daylight is fading. The amber has deepened to a rich purple blue, and the first stars are beginning to appear, faint and distant. The window has become a dark mirror, reflecting the lamplight back into the room, so that the workshop seems contained, separate from the world beyond. The night is coming fully now, settling over the town, bringing with it a stillness that feels almost tangible, as though the darkness itself carries weight and substance. Inside the workshop, time seems to slow even further. The flames in the lamps burn steadily, their light unwavering. The fire in the hearth crackles softly as a log shifts and settles deeper into the coals. The wax in the pan is beginning to change, the edges of the curls softening, collapsing slowly into liquid. The transformation is so gradual that it is almost impossible to see it happening, and yet it is happening, moment by moment, the solid becoming fluid, the opaque becoming translucent. The candle maker glances toward the hearth, checking the progress of the wax without moving from the work table. Not yet. The wax is softening, but it has not yet fully melted. There is still time. The candle maker continues with the preparations, reaching now for the spools of wick. The wick is made of braided cotton, soft and flexible, and it comes wound tightly on wooden spools. The candle maker measures out lengths of wick, one for each mold that will be used tonight, cutting each piece with a small pair of scissors. The cuts are precise, each length exactly the right size, with a little extra to be trimmed away later. Each wick is threaded through a small metal disc, a wick holder that will keep the wick centered at the bottom of the mold. The candle maker's fingers move deftly, guiding the wick through the tiny hole in the disc, pulling it through until a short tail extends on one side. The process is repeated for each wick, each disc, until a neat row of them lies ready on the work table. The repetition is soothing, the small motions falling into a rhythm that requires no thought, only attention. The workshop is very quiet now. The sounds from outside have ceased entirely. There are no footsteps, no voices, no distant clatter of wheels on cobblestones. The town has settled into sleep, or at least into the deep rest of evening, when people withdraw into their homes and close their curtains and let the day go. Inside the workshop, the silence is companionable, not empty but full of presence, the presence of the fire, the lamps, the tools, the wax slowly melting. It is a silence that invites rest, that asks nothing and offers everything. The candle maker moves to the hearth again, kneeling beside the fire to check the wax. The pan is warm now, and the wax has melted almost completely. A few small pieces remain solid, floating on the surface of the liquid wax like tiny islands, but even these are softening, their edges blurring, dissolving into the golden pool. The candle maker watches for a moment, mesmerized by the slow movement of the melting wax, the way it shifts and swirls almost imperceptibly in the pan. There is something beautiful in this, something that never grows old no matter how many times it is witnessed. Satisfied that the wax is nearly ready, the candle maker reaches for a long wooden spoon and gently stirs the liquid. The motion is slow and circular, moving the wax without agitating it, encouraging the last solid pieces to melt. The spoon moves through the wax with a soft resistance, and the golden liquid spirals lazily in the pan, catching the firelight, glowing from within. The scent of the beeswax is stronger now, released by the warmth, filling the air near the hearth with its sweet, comforting fragrance. The candle maker stirs a moment longer, then sets the spoon aside and remains kneeling by the fire, simply watching the wax, making sure that it does not become too hot. The flames dance gently in the hearth, and their light flickers across the candle maker's face, across the worn stones, across the surface of the melted wax. It is warm here and comfortable, and the candle maker is in no hurry to move. This is part of the rhythm of the work, the moments of action interspersed with moments of stillness, of waiting, of simply being present with the materials and the fire and the quiet evening. After a time, the candle maker rises slowly and returns to the work table. The candle maker stands at the work table now, looking down at the row of prepared molds, at the wicks with their small metal discs, at the clean surfaces waiting to receive the work of the evening. Everything is ready. Everything is in its place. The workshop feels suspended in this moment, held between preparation and action, and there is a peacefulness in this suspension, a sense that there is no need to rush forward, that the work will unfold in its own time, at its own gentle pace. The candle maker reaches for the first mold, a medium-sized cylinder that will produce a candle suitable for an ordinary room, a candle that might burn through a long winter evening or accompany someone through the hours of reading or quiet work. The mold is cool to the touch, the metal smooth and slightly heavy. The candle maker sets it upright on the work table, positioning it carefully so that it stands perfectly vertical. This is important. If the mold is tilted even slightly, the finished candle will be uneven, its form imperfect. But the table is level, worn smooth by years of use, and the mold sits straight and stable. Now the candle maker takes one of the prepared wicks and threads it through the small hole at the bottom of the mold. The metal disc sits flush against the hole, blocking it, and the wick extends upward through the center of the empty mold. The candle maker pulls the wick taut and winds the excess around a small wooden rod, which is then laid across the top of the mold, holding the wick centered and straight. The process requires care but not force, a gentle firmness that keeps everything aligned without strain. When it is done, the wick hangs perfectly centered within the mold, ready to receive the wax. The candle maker prepares several more molds in the same way, working slowly and methodically, repeating the same motions with the same quiet attention. Each mold is positioned, each wick is threaded and centered, each wooden rod is laid carefully across the opening. The work has its own music, its own rhythm, the soft clink of metal on wood, the whisper of cotton wick being pulled through metal, the faint creak of the work table as the candle maker shifts position. These are small sounds, barely sounds at all, but they fill the space in the way that silence can never be truly empty, in the way that quiet rooms are always full of gentle life. When several molds are ready, the candle maker returns once more to the hearth. The wax has melted completely now, a smooth golden pool that moves with liquid grace in the pan. The candle maker lifts the pan carefully from the trivet, using a thick cloth to protect hands from the heat. The pan is warm but not uncomfortably so. The wax has been heated slowly enough that it has not become dangerously hot. This is the art of the work, knowing the temperatures by feel and observation rather than by measurement, trusting the senses and the accumulated wisdom of countless evenings just like this one. Carrying the pan to the work table, the candle maker pauses for a moment, letting the wax settle, letting any small bubbles rise to the surface and dissipate. The lamplight catches in the liquid wax, and it glows with an inner warmth, a soft radiance that seems almost alive. The scent rises more strongly now, the sweet honey fragrance of beeswax filling the workshop, mingling with the faint smell of lamp oil and wood smoke and the indefinable scent of old stone and timber. It is a combination that speaks of tradition, of work done the same way for generations, of knowledge passed down through years of quiet practice. The candle maker tips the pan slowly, guiding the molten wax toward the spout formed in one corner. The wax begins to flow, a thick golden stream that pours with a heavy smoothness, like honey but warmer, more liquid. The candle maker positions the pan over the first mold and lets the wax pour into the opening, watching as it flows down around the wick, filling the mold from bottom to top. The pouring must be done slowly to avoid creating bubbles or gaps, but not so slowly that the wax begins to cool and thicken before the mold is full. It is a balance, a practiced motion that the candle maker's hands know without needing to think about it. The wax fills the first mold steadily, rising up the sides, surrounding the wick in a column of liquid gold. When the mold is full to just below the rim, the candle maker tilts the pan upright again, stopping the flow precisely. A single drop falls after the pour ceases, landing with a soft plop on the work table, where it will cool into a small golden bead that can be scraped up and returned to the next batch of melted wax. Nothing is wasted here. Every scrap of wax, every small remainder, will be collected and used again. The candle maker moves to the next mold and repeats the process, pouring slowly and steadily, watching the wax flow and settle, stopping at just the right moment. Then the next mold, and the next, until all the prepared molds have been filled and the pan is nearly empty. The remaining wax in the pan is poured into a small container to cool and be saved for another evening. The pan is set aside, and the candle maker stands back to look at the filled molds, now heavy with liquid wax that glows softly in the lamplight. The candles cannot be moved yet. The wax must be allowed to cool and harden, a process that will take some time. The candle maker knows this well, knows that patience is required now more than ever, that there is nothing to do but wait and allow the wax to do what it will do in its own time. This is not frustrating or tedious. This is simply part of the rhythm, part of the evening's gentle unfolding. There is no resistance to the waiting, no desire for it to be over. The waiting itself is peaceful, another form of rest. While the wax cools, the candle maker turns to other small tasks. There are tools to clean, surfaces to wipe down, bits of wax to scrape from the edge of the work table. The candle maker works slowly, moving from one task to the next without hurry or hesitation. A knife is wiped clean with a soft cloth, then set back in its proper place. The scissors are cleaned and returned to their hook on the wall. The wooden spoon used to stir the wax is wiped until no trace of wax remains, then hung beside the hearth where it will be ready for the next use. The work table itself receives attention now, the candle maker moving along its length with a damp cloth, wiping away the small drops and smudges of wax that have accumulated during the evening's work. The motion is slow and thorough, the cloth moving in smooth strokes, the candle makers breathing steady and even. There is something meditative in this cleaning, in the act of restoring order, of making things ready for the next time they will be needed. The work table gleams softly when the work is done, its surface clean and cared for, a testimony to the value of simple attention and regular maintenance. The candle maker glances toward the window and sees that full night has arrived. The glass is dark now, showing nothing of the world beyond except the faint reflection of the lamplight within. The stars, if they are visible tonight, are too distant and faint to be seen through the thick, uneven glass. But the darkness itself is visible, a deep velvety blackness that presses gently against the window, held back by the warm glow of the workshop, but not threatening, not unwelcome. The night is simply there, existing alongside the light, two parts of the same wholeness. Inside the workshop, the temperature has stabilized. The fire in the hearth burns steadily, its flames lower now, but still providing a gentle warmth that spreads through the room. The lamps continue their unwavering glow, their wicks trimmed properly so that they burn cleanly, without smoke or flicker. The air is comfortable, neither too warm nor too cool, and it carries the mingled scents of beeswax and wood smoke and the faint mustiness of old stone. It is an atmosphere that invites rest, that encourages the body to relax and the mind to settle into quietness. The candle maker pulls a tall wooden stool closer to the work table and sits down slowly, grateful for the chance to rest. The stool is old and sturdy, its seat worn smooth by years of use, shaped by countless hours of sitting in just this way. The candle maker settles onto it, feeling the familiar comfort of the worn wood, the way it supports without demanding anything in return. From this position, the candle maker can watch the filled molds, can observe the slow process of the wax cooling and hardening. At first, there is little visible change. The wax remains liquid, its surface smooth and level in each mold, reflecting the lamplight with a soft sheen. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, the surface begins to change. A thin skin forms at the edges where the wax touches the metal mold, a slightly duller area where the wax has cooled enough to begin solidifying. This solid edge spreads inward, slowly, the boundary between liquid and solid moving like a tide that advances with infinite patience. The candle maker watches this transformation with a quiet fascination that never diminishes, no matter how many times it has been witnessed. There is something profound in watching a substance change states, in seeing the fluid become firm, the formless take on shape. It is a reminder of the fundamental nature of things, of the way matter responds to temperature and time, of the basic physical laws that govern everything from the smallest candle to the largest mountain. And yet there is also something almost magical in it, something that speaks to a deeper mystery, to the strange beauty of transformation itself. The workshop is very still now. The only movements are the gentle flickering of the flames in the lamps and the hearth, the barely visible progression of the cooling wax, the occasional shift of the candle maker's position on the stool. Time seems to have slowed even further, or perhaps it has simply become less important, less relevant to what is happening here. There is only the present moment, extending indefinitely in all directions, containing everything necessary for peace and rest. The candle maker's thoughts drift like smoke, rising and dispersing, never quite forming into anything solid or substantial. There are memories here woven into the fabric of the workshop, memories of learning this craft, of the first awkward attempts at pouring wax, of burned fingers and spilled molds and candles that came out crooked or full of holes. But those memories are old and soft now, worn smooth by time, and they bring no discomfort, only a gentle sense of how far the journey has come, how much has been learned through patient repetition and quiet attention. There are thoughts, too, of the candles themselves, of where they might go when they leave this workshop. Some will be sold in the town's market, carried home by people who need light for their evenings, who want the warm glow and sweet scent of beeswax to fill their rooms. Some will be given to the church down the lane, to burn on the altar during services, their light adding to the sense of sanctity and peace. Some will be wrapped carefully and stored for special occasions, celebrations, ceremonies, the marking of significant moments. But all of this is distant and unimportant right now. Right now, the candles are simply here, cooling slowly in their molds, becoming what they are meant to be. The candle maker rises from the stool after a time, moving slowly, feeling the pleasant stiffness that comes from sitting still in one position. A few steps carry the candle maker to the hearth, where the fire has burned down to a bed of glowing coals, pulsing gently with contained heat. The candle maker selects a piece of wood from the small stack beside the hearth, a split log that is dry and seasoned, light in the hand. This is placed carefully on the coals, positioned so that the heat will reach it evenly, so that it will catch and burn without smothering the fire. For a moment, nothing happens. The wood simply sits on the coals, dark and unchanged. But then, slowly, wisps of smoke begin to rise from its surface. The smoke is thin and pale, nearly invisible in the lamplight, but it carries the scent of the wood, oak perhaps, or ash, something hardwood and clean burning. The wisps thicken gradually, and then, suddenly, a small flame appears, licking along the edge of the log. The flame grows, spreading across the wood's surface, and soon the log is burning steadily, its flames dancing and curling in patterns that are endlessly varied and endlessly similar. The candle maker watches the fire for a few moments longer, then returns to the work table. The wax in the molds has cooled considerably now. The surface is no longer liquid, but has taken on a matte finish, the characteristic appearance of beeswax that has solidified. The candle maker reaches out tentatively and touches the surface of one candle with a fingertip. The wax is firm now, though still slightly warm, yielding just barely to gentle pressure. It is not quite ready to be removed from the molds. It needs more time to cool completely, to harden all the way through, but the transformation is well underway. The candle maker moves to a shelf along the wall where blocks of different colored wax are stored. Not all candles are made of pure beeswax. Some are blended with other waxes or tinted with natural dyes to create different colors and properties. The candle maker runs a hand along the shelf, fingers trailing over the blocks, a pale green tinted with herbs, a deep red colored with madder root, a creamy white that is pure and unadorned. Tonight, perhaps, there is time to prepare a few special candles, something different from the usual golden beeswax. But then the candle maker pauses, hand resting on one of the blocks, and reconsiders. The evening is peaceful as it is. The rhythm has been gentle and unhurried, and there is something to be said for simplicity, for doing one thing well rather than many things adequately. The colored waxes can wait for another evening. Tonight will remain devoted to the pure golden candles cooling in their molds, to the slow and patient work that requires no embellishment or variation. The candle maker's hand drops away from the shelf, and there is a sense of rightness in this decision, a quiet satisfaction in choosing simplicity. The workshop seems to approve, if such a thing can be imagined. The lamplight glows perhaps a little warmer. The fire crackles with what might be contentment. The very air seems to settle more deeply into peace. Returning to the stool, the candle maker sits once more and allows the stillness to deepen. Outside, the night continues its slow progression through the hours, but inside the workshop, time has become something different, something more fluid and less insistent. The candle maker sits in the stillness, hands resting gently in lap, breathing slow and even. The workshop has settled into a deeper quiet now, the kind of quiet that comes not from the absence of sound, but from the presence of peace. The lamps burn with their steady golden light. The fire whispers softly to itself in the hearth. The cooling candles rest in their molds, silent and patient, undergoing their slow transformation from liquid to solid, from potential to form. There is no need to do anything in this moment. The work that required attention has been completed. The work that remains cannot be hurried. And so the candle maker simply sits, existing within the gentle envelope of warmth and lamplight, allowing the mind to rest as the body rests, asking nothing of the evening except that it continue as it has been, slowly, quietly, without urgency or demand. The stool beneath the candle maker is comfortable in its familiarity. The wood has been shaped by years of use, worn into curves that accommodate the body's natural position. There is no strain in sitting here, no discomfort that demands adjustment or movement. The candle maker's feet rest flat against the floor, feeling the worn boards beneath, the slight unevenness that speaks of age and settling. The hands remain in the lap, fingers loosely curled, relaxed and still. The shoulders have dropped away from the ears, releasing tension that was never consciously held, but that dissipates nonetheless in the quietness of this place. The candle maker's gaze moves slowly around the workshop, taking in the familiar surroundings without analysis or judgment. There, against the far wall, are the shelves that hold supplies, blocks of wax, spools of wick, small bottles of essential oils for scenting candles when requested, packets of natural dyes, tools wrapped in cloth to protect them from dust. The shelves are orderly but not rigid, arranged in a way that speaks of practical use rather than ornamental display. Everything has its place, and everything is in its place, creating a sense of harmony that is felt rather than observed. Near the door stands a tall cabinet with glass-fronted doors, and within it are displayed some of the candles that have been made here over the months and years, samples of different sizes and styles, kept as references or examples. There are tapers as thin as a finger and as tall as a forearm, pillar candles of various diameters, small votives meant to burn in holders, candles molded into simple decorative shapes. All of them share the same quality of careful craftsmanship, the same evidence of patient attention. Even in the dim lamplight, their surfaces gleam softly, and the beeswax shows its characteristic warm color, somewhere between gold and amber, a hue that seems to hold sunlight within it. The candle maker's eyes return to the work table and the molds that rest upon it. The wax has continued its cooling, and the surface of each candle now has the firm, matte appearance that indicates solidification is nearly complete. But nearly is not yet completely, and so the waiting continues. The candle maker does not check the time, does not calculate how many more minutes might be required. Time is not measured that way here in the workshop, especially not in the evening, especially not in the deep quiet of night. Time is measured by the state of the wax, by the feel of the air, by an inner sense of rightness that comes from long experience and cannot be explained or taught, only developed through years of attentive practice. A log in the hearth shifts suddenly, settling deeper into the coals with a soft sound like a sigh. A scatter of sparks rises briefly, tiny points of orange light that spiral upward and fade before they reach the chimney's opening. The flames adjust to the new configuration of the wood, rising a little higher for a moment before settling back into their steady dance. The fire is burning well, requiring no attention, no adjustment. It will continue to burn through the evening at this same gentle pace, providing warmth without excess, light without glare. The candle maker rises from the stool, moving slowly, feeling the way the body unfolds from its resting position. There is a momentary stiffness, a brief reminder of muscles that have been still, and then movement returns with its familiar ease. A few steps carry the candle maker to the window, and there is a pause there, looking out into the darkness beyond the glass. The night is complete now, full and deep, and the world outside has disappeared into it. The other buildings along the lane are invisible, their shapes lost in shadow. No lights show in any windows. The town has gone to sleep, or at least to rest, and the candle maker's workshop stands alone in its little island of lamplight, a small beacon in the encompassing dark. But the darkness is not threatening. It is simply there, a necessary counterpart to the light, a background against which the warmth and glow of the workshop can be appreciated. The candle maker does not feel isolated or alone despite the lateness of the hour and the emptiness of the streets beyond. There is a sense of connection to all the other people sleeping in their beds, to the town itself resting through the night hours, to the larger rhythms of day and night and the turning of the earth that brings each in its proper time. The candle maker turns from the window and moves toward the far corner of the workshop, where a small table holds a ceramic pitcher and basin. The pitcher is filled with clean water, cool and clear, and the candle maker pours some into the basin, then bends to splash it gently on face and hands. The water is refreshing, bracing without being shocking, and it brings a pleasant alertness that is not the same as tension or anxiety. It is simply a gentle wakefulness, a renewal of presence. The candle maker dries face and hands on a clean linen towel that hangs beside the basin, then returns the towel to its place, leaving everything neat and ready for the next use. There is a kettle that rests on a small iron stand near the hearth, and the candle maker fills this from the pitcher, then positions it carefully at the edge of the fire where the heat will warm the water gradually. In time, there will be tea, something herbal and soothing to accompany the later hours of the evening. But there is no hurry for this. The water will warm in its own time, and the tea will wait until it is wanted. Everything here moves at the pace of patience, at the speed of careful attention rather than urgent need. The candle maker returns to the work table and begins to check the cooling candles more carefully now. Each mold is touched gently, tested, evaluated. The wax has cooled significantly, has hardened almost completely. The candles are nearly ready to be removed from their molds. Nearly, but not quite yet. They need just a little more time, just a little more cooling, to ensure that they have solidified all the way through, that they will release cleanly from the molds without tearing or distorting. While waiting for this final cooling, the candle maker prepares the space for the next step. A clean cloth is laid out on the work table, providing a soft surface where the finished candles can be placed. Trimming knives are checked and arranged within easy reach. A small pot of melted wax, kept liquid by the residual heat from earlier, is positioned nearby for sealing any small imperfections that might appear. Everything is made ready, not rushed but prepared with the same careful attention that has characterized the entire evening. The candle maker sits again, and the waiting continues. But it is not an empty waiting, not a tedious marking of time until something else can begin. It is a full waiting, a waiting that is itself a form of presence, of being completely here in this moment with these tasks and this gentle rhythm. The mind does not race ahead to what comes next, does not review what has already been completed. The mind simply rests in the present, observing the lamplight and the firelight, feeling the warmth in the air, smelling the sweet scent of beeswax that has become so familiar it is almost unnoticeable, almost part of the candle maker's own being. There is a quality to this time that is difficult to name. It is not quite meditation, for there is no formal practice being followed, no technique being applied. It is not quite daydreaming, for the mind is not wandering through fantasies or imaginings. It is something simpler and perhaps deeper, a state of restful attention, of being awake and present without effort or strain. The candle maker has found this state many times before, has learned over years of evening work that it arises naturally when the conditions are right, when the tasks are familiar and unhurried, when the environment is peaceful and contained, when there is nowhere else to be and nothing else that demands attention. In this state, time becomes strange. Minutes might pass or hours might pass, and there is no way to tell the difference without reference to some external measure. The experience is of a continuous present, a now that stretches and expands to contain everything necessary. The candle maker breathes slowly, in and out, and each breath is complete in itself, neither hurrying forward to the next nor lingering on the last. The heart beats its steady rhythm, unnoticed and undemanding, simply doing its work as the wax does its work and the fire does its work, all part of the same seamless whole. A sound from outside breaks the silence, or not quite breaks it, but enters into it so gently that the silence seems to absorb the sound and make it part of itself. It is the sound of the night watch making rounds through the town, footsteps on cobblestones, slow and measured, accompanied by the faint jingle of keys and the tap of a walking stick. The sound approaches gradually, passes by the workshop, and then recedes into the distance, fading away until the silence returns, unchanged and untroubled. The candle maker has heard this sound countless times, knows that it signals a certain hour of the night, knows that it means the town is safe and watched over. But the knowledge is background, requiring no active thought, and the silence settles back as if the sound had been merely a dream. The candle maker stands once more and moves to the hearth, where the kettle is beginning to steam very gently, wisps of vapor rising from its spout. Not boiling yet, but warm enough now for tea. The candle maker selects a small earthenware teapot from a shelf and places a measure of dried herbs into it. Chamomile and lavender, perhaps, with a hint of lemon balm, herbs that are calming and gentle, suited to the quiet of the evening. When the water in the kettle is ready, it will be poured over these herbs, and they will steep slowly, releasing their fragrance and their properties into the water, creating a tea that is both comforting and restorative. But the water is not quite ready yet, and so the candle maker leaves the kettle where it sits and returns attention to the molds on the work table. Now finally the candles are ready. The wax has cooled completely, has hardened all the way through, and the slight warmth that remains is only the ambient warmth of the room, not the heat of recent melting. The candle maker picks up the first mold, feeling its weight, its coolness. The metal has drawn heat away from the wax efficiently, helping it to cool evenly and thoroughly. Turning the mold over, the candle maker gently presses on the base where the wick holder sits. There is a moment of resistance, and then the candle begins to slide free. It emerges slowly, smoothly, its surface gleaming in the lamplight. The candle is perfect, straight and even, with no visible flaws or bubbles, its color a rich golden amber that seems to glow from within even before it has been lit. The wick stands straight and centered, exactly as it should, ready to be trimmed and prepared for burning. The candle maker places this first finished candle on the cloth that has been laid out, positioning it carefully so that it stands upright and stable. There is a moment of quiet satisfaction in seeing the finished work, in knowing that the patience and care have resulted in something beautiful and useful. But the satisfaction is gentle, not prideful or boastful. It is simply the natural pleasure that comes from work done well, from attention given fully to the task at hand. The process is repeated with the next mold and the next. One by one, the candles are released from their metal containers, each one sliding free to reveal its smooth surface and perfect form. The candle maker works slowly, carefully, making sure that each candle is fully released before applying any pressure, ensuring that the delicate work is not damaged at this final stage. Each candle joins the others on the cloth, standing in a neat row, a collection of golden lights waiting to fulfill their purpose. When all the candles have been removed from their molds, the candle maker stands back and regards them with quiet appreciation. They are all slightly different, some a little taller, some a little wider, variations in size according to the different molds that were used, but they share the same quality of careful making, the same evidence of patient work. Their surfaces are smooth and unblemished. Their wicks are straight and properly centered. They are ready now for the final steps, trimming and finishing, but these steps can wait a little longer. The candles need to rest to complete their cooling in the open air, and the candle maker needs a moment of rest as well. The kettle is steaming more vigorously now, and the candle maker pours the hot water over the herbs in the teapot, then places a small lid on top to keep the heat contained while the tea steeps. The fragrance of the herbs rises immediately, mingling with the scent of beeswax, creating a combination that is deeply soothing and pleasantly complex. The candle maker inhales deeply, drawing the scented air into the lungs, feeling it spread through the body with its promise of calm and comfort. While the tea steeps, the candle maker moves around the workshop, tending to small tasks that require no great concentration. The molds are wiped clean and returned to their place on the shelf. The pan that held the melted wax is cleaned carefully, all traces of wax removed, then set aside to dry. The work table is wiped down once more, ensuring that no stray drops of wax remain to harden and create rough spots on the smooth surface. These are the tasks of maintenance, of caring for the tools and the space, ensuring that everything will be ready for the next time, for the next evening's work. The tea has steeped long enough now, and the candle maker pours a cup, watching the golden liquid flow from the pot's spout, seeing the tiny fragments of herb that swirl in the cup before settling. The cup is held in both hands, warming them, and the candle maker lifts it to inhale the steam, to take in the full fragrance of the herbs before tasting. Then slowly a first sip. The tea is hot but not scalding, flavorful but not overwhelming, exactly what is needed in this moment. The warmth spreads through the body, adding to the warmth already present from the fire and the lamps, creating a sense of complete comfort, of being held and cared for by the simple elements of heat and light and nourishment. The candle maker carries the cup to the stool and sits once more, cradling the tea, taking small sips, allowing the evening to continue its slow unfolding. The tea warms the candle maker from within, a gentle heat that spreads through chest and belly, easing muscles that were not consciously tense but that relax nonetheless, releasing into a deeper state of rest. The cup rests between both palms, and the warmth radiates into the hands, into the fingers that have worked steadily through the evening. The candle maker sits quietly, taking small sips, allowing the tea to do its work, feeling the herbal infusion begin to settle the mind into an even quieter place, a deeper stillness. The workshop seems to breathe around the candle maker, expanding and contracting in some subtle rhythm that is felt rather than seen. The lamplight flickers occasionally, just the smallest movement, a brief dimming and brightening that might be caused by a draft too slight to feel, or by some invisible fluctuation in the flame itself. The fire in the hearth has burned down again, its flames lower now, more coal than wood, glowing with a deep orange red that pulses gently, hypnotically. The heat from the hearth has become a constant presence, no longer actively noticed but always there, a baseline of warmth against which all other sensations are measured. The row of finished candles stands on the work table, and they have their own presence now, their own quiet weight in the room. They are no longer shapeless wax waiting to become something. They have achieved their form, have become what they were meant to be. And yet they are not complete. They still need their final finishing, the trimming of wicks and the smoothing of any rough edges, the small perfecting touches that will make them truly ready for use. But there is time for this. There is all the time that is needed. The night is long, and the work is gentle, and there is no pressure to rush toward completion. The candle maker finishes the tea slowly, draining the cup to the last warm drops, tasting the slight bitterness of the herbs concentrated at the bottom. The cup is set aside on the edge of the work table, and the candle maker remains seated for a moment longer, hands now resting in lap, breathing slowly and evenly. The tea has brought its own particular kind of peace, a softness that settles over thoughts like a veil, not obscuring but gentling, taking the sharp edges off any lingering concerns or preoccupations. After a time, the candle maker rises and moves to the work table where the candles wait. It is time now for the finishing work, for the careful attention to detail that will complete what has been begun. The candle maker selects a small sharp knife, one with a narrow blade that has been kept well honed, its edge true and precise. The first candle is lifted carefully, held in one hand while the other brings the knife to the wick. The wick extends above the top of the candle by several inches, more than is needed, and it must be trimmed to the proper length. The candle maker measures by eye, by feel, by the accumulated knowledge of how long a wick should be for a candle of this size and type. The knife cuts through the cotton cleanly, and the excess falls away, a small scrap that is collected and set aside with the other bits of wick to be saved and perhaps reused in some other way. The remaining wick is now the perfect length, long enough to be easily lit, short enough that it will burn properly without smoking or creating too large a flame. But the wick is not quite finished. The top of it, where it was cut, is slightly frayed, and this must be smoothed. The candle maker uses fingertips to roll the very end of the wick, compressing the cotton fibers, creating a small point that will catch flame easily when the candle is first lit. This is delicate work, requiring a light touch, and the candle maker's fingers move with practiced precision, shaping the wick without pulling it loose from the wax that holds it. When the wick is properly trimmed and shaped, the candle maker examines the candle itself, turning it slowly, looking for any imperfections in the surface. The wax is smooth and even, with only the faintest seam line where the two halves of the mold met. This seam is barely visible, but the candle maker runs a thumb along it, feeling for any roughness, any slight ridge that might detract from the candle's perfection. There is the smallest catch, a place where a tiny bit of wax has been pushed up during the release from the mold. The candle maker warms the knife blade slightly by holding it near one of the lamps, then uses the warm metal to gently smooth the imperfection, melting it just enough to level it with the surrounding surface. The candle is examined once more, turned in the lamplight, inspected from every angle. It is perfect now, or as close to perfect as makes no difference. The surface gleams smoothly. The wick stands straight and properly trimmed. The color is rich and even throughout. The candle maker sets it carefully aside, placing it in a new position on a clean section of the work table, and reaches for the next candle. The process is repeated with each candle in turn. Each wick is trimmed to the proper length and shaped to a point. Each surface is examined and smoothed if necessary. The work is slow and methodical, requiring full attention but not strain, not effort that creates tension. It is work that the hands know how to do, that the eyes know how to assess, and the candle maker moves through it with the ease of long practice, with the comfort of familiar motions repeated countless times before. The finished candles begin to accumulate in their new position, each one standing straight and perfect, ready now for whatever purpose they will serve. Some will be wrapped individually in paper and stored until they are sold. Some will be placed in the display cabinet to serve as examples of the work done here. Some might be kept for the candle maker's own use, to light this very workshop on future evenings, to provide the same warm glow that surrounds everything now. As the candle maker works, the night deepens further outside. The darkness beyond the windows seems to grow thicker, more substantial, pressing more closely against the glass. But inside, nothing changes. The lamps burn with the same steady light. The fire glows with the same gentle warmth. The workshop remains its own small world, separate from the larger darkness, contained and peaceful and safe. The candle maker's movements have become even slower now, not from tiredness, but from a deepening sense of presence, of being fully here in each moment, in each small action. The knife moves through the cotton wick with deliberate care. The fingers shape and smooth with patient attention. The eyes observe and assess with quiet thoroughness. There is no part of the mind thinking about other things, about tomorrow or yesterday, about concerns or plans or worries. There is only this, the candle in hand, the wick to be trimmed, the surface to be perfected, the next candle waiting its turn. When the last candle has been finished, the candle maker sets down the knife and stands for a moment, looking at the completed work. A dozen candles, perhaps more, all standing in neat rows, all perfect in their simplicity, all ready to bring light and warmth to whoever might need them. There is satisfaction in this, but also something more, a sense of rightness, of having participated in something good and useful, of having added something worthwhile to the world through patient work and careful attention. The candle maker begins to arrange the finished candles for storage. Some are wrapped individually in squares of soft paper, the paper folded carefully around each candle and secured with a small length of twine. The wrapped candles are placed in a wooden box, cushioned with straw to prevent them from knocking against each other, protected from dust and damage. Other candles are left unwrapped, but placed carefully on a shelf where they can be seen and easily accessed when needed. Each candle is positioned with the same care that went into its making, ensuring that it will remain in perfect condition until it is ready to be used. The work of finishing and storing the candles takes time, but the candle maker is in no hurry. Each wrapping is folded precisely. Each piece of twine is tied with a neat bow that will be easy to untie when the time comes. Each candle is positioned thoughtfully on its shelf or in its box. The care extends through every small action, a continuous thread of attention that connects each task to the next, each moment to the whole. When the candles have all been put away, the work table is bare again except for the tools and the empty molds. The candle maker begins to clean these now, wiping each mold carefully to remove any residual wax, checking each one for any damage or where that might need attention. The molds are sturdy, built to last for years, but they still require regular maintenance, regular checking to ensure that they remain in good condition. The candle maker examines each mold closely, looking at the interior surface for any scratches or rough spots that might affect the next batch of candles, checking the base to make sure the opening for the wick remains clear and properly sized. The molds are all in good condition, requiring no repairs, and they are returned to their place on the shelf, arranged by size so that they can be easily found when needed. The trimming knife is cleaned and dried, then returned to its drawer. The bits of trimmed wick are gathered together and placed in a small jar where such things are collected. The scraps of wax that accumulated during the evening's work are collected as well, added to a larger container where wax remnants are stored until there is enough to be melted down and reused. The candle maker moves slowly through the workshop now, completing the final tasks of the evening. The cloth that protected the work table is shaken out gently, freeing it of any small particles of wax or dust, then folded and put away. The teapot is rinsed with clean water and left to dry. The teacup is washed carefully and returned to its place on the shelf. Every object is restored to its proper position. Every surface is left clean and ready for the next time. The fire in the hearth has burned very low now, mostly coals with just a few small flames flickering among them. The candle maker uses a poker to spread the coals evenly across the hearth floor, ensuring that they will burn out safely and completely, that no concentrated heat remains that might pose any danger. The iron trivet is removed and set aside to cool. The hearth tools are hung back on their hooks. Everything is made safe, made ready for the workshop to rest through the remaining hours of night. The candle maker stands before the hearth for a moment, watching the last flames dance among the coals, feeling the warmth that still radiates from the stones. There is something deeply comforting in this, the end of the fire, the completion of its work, the way it burns down gradually and peacefully rather than being suddenly extinguished. The fire has given its warmth through the evening, has helped with the melting of wax, has provided its gentle light and companionship, and now it is releasing its hold on the wood, allowing it to return to ash and ember and eventually to stillness. The candle maker turns from the hearth and begins to attend to the lamps. There are 6 of them scattered around the workshop, and each one must be checked and prepared for the night. The candle maker moves to the first lamp and carefully lifts the glass chimney, setting it aside. The wick is checked, it has burned evenly, and does not need trimming. The oil reservoir is examined. There is still plenty of oil remaining, enough for the lamp to burn through many more hours if needed. The chimney is checked for soot, wiped clean with a soft cloth, then replaced over the flame. Each lamp receives the same careful attention. Wicks are checked and trimmed if necessary. Oil levels are noted. Chimneys are cleaned and polished. The work is routine but not careless, not hurried. Each lamp is important. Each one deserves the same care and maintenance. When all the lamps have been checked, they continue to burn steadily, their flames unwavering. Their light is warm and golden as it has been throughout the entire evening. But now the candle maker begins to extinguish some of them. The workshop does not need so much light with the work completed. A softer glow will be more appropriate for the remaining hours, for the final settling into rest. The candle maker moves to the lamp farthest from the work table and turns down the wick, reducing the flame gradually until it flickers and goes out. A thin wisp of smoke rises from the extinguished wick, carrying the scent of burned oil, and then it too dissipates, leaving only the faint smell behind. Another lamp is turned down and extinguished, and then another. The workshop grows gradually dimmer, the shadows lengthening and deepening, the pools of light contracting toward the center of the room. But it is not dark, not uncomfortable. There is still light enough to see by, still warmth enough to feel embraced by. The remaining lamps, 3 of them now, cast a softer glow that is more intimate, more conducive to rest and quiet reflection. The candle maker moves to the window one last time and looks out into the night. The darkness is complete now, absolute, and the world beyond the workshop has disappeared entirely. There are no stars visible through the thick glass, no moon, no lights from neighboring buildings. There is only darkness, deep and encompassing, and the faint reflection of the workshop's interior glowing in the window glass like a small world suspended in an infinite void. But the darkness does not feel threatening or oppressive. It feels appropriate, natural, a necessary part of the cycle of day and night, of light and shadow, of waking and sleeping. The candle maker stands quietly at the window, honoring the darkness, acknowledging its place and its purpose, feeling no need to push it back or fill it with more light than is needed. The darkness is simply there, and it is good. Turning from the window, the candle maker makes one final circuit of the workshop, checking that everything is as it should be. The candle maker moves slowly through the workshop, footsteps soft and deliberate, checking each area with the thoroughness of long habit. The work table is clean and clear, its surface wiped smooth, ready for the next day's work. The shelves are orderly, each item in its proper place, each tool and supply positioned, so that it can be found easily when needed. The floor is swept clean of any fallen wax or stray bits of wick or dust that might have accumulated during the evening's work. Everything is as it should be, peaceful and prepared, a space that honors the work done within it. The candle maker pauses near the cabinet with the glass doors, the one that holds the display candles, and stands for a moment looking at them through the glass. They gleam softly in the lamplight, these candles of various shapes and sizes, each one a testament to the craft practiced here. Some are tall and slender, elegant tapers that would grace a formal table. Some are wide and substantial, pillars that could burn for many hours, providing steady light through long winter evenings. Some are small and delicate, votives meant for quiet contemplation or prayer. All of them share the same quality of careful making, the same evidence of patience and skill applied over time. The candle maker's reflection is visible in the glass of the cabinet doors, superimposed over the candles within, a ghostly double image, the maker and the made, existing together in the same space, connected by purpose and care. The reflection is dim and indistinct, features blurred by the lamplight and the thickness of the glass, but it is there nonetheless, a reminder of presence, of the human hands and attention that transform raw materials into useful objects, simple wax and wick into sources of light and warmth. After a moment, the candle maker moves on, continuing the slow circuit of the workshop. Near the door hangs a heavy coat, wool-lined with flannel, suitable for cold winter mornings when the workshop must be opened and the fire must be lit before warmth has had time to accumulate. Beside it hangs a leather apron, worn smooth by use, marked with small burns and wax stains that tell their own story of work done and tasks completed. These garments hang quietly on their hooks, waiting for the next time they will be needed, patient in their own way. The candle maker reaches out and touches the coat gently, feeling the rough texture of the wool, the warmth it still holds from the last time it was worn. There is comfort in this touch, in the tangible reminder of continuity, of the way each day follows the last. Each task builds upon the previous one. Each moment connects to all the others in an unbroken chain of presence and attention. The coat is just a coat, and yet it is more than that. It is a companion to the work, a protection against the cold, a constant presence that will be there tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. The candle maker's hand drops away from the coat and returns to the familiar position of rest. The circuit of the workshop is complete. Everything has been checked and found to be in order. There is nothing more that needs to be done tonight, no task left unfinished, no detail overlooked. The work is complete, and the workshop is ready to rest, to settle into the quiet hours of deepest night, to wait peacefully until morning comes and work begins again. But the candle maker is not quite ready to leave. There is something about these final hours that invites lingering, that makes departure feel premature even when all the work is finished. It is not restlessness or reluctance to go home. It is something else, a desire to honor this time, this space, this quality of peaceful presence that has developed through the evening. To rush away now would somehow break the spell, would fracture the wholeness of what has been created here through patient work and quiet attention. And so the candle maker returns to the tall wooden stool and sits once more, settling onto its familiar seat, feeling the way the body relaxes into the worn wood. From this position, the entire workshop is visible. The work table with its clean surface, the shelves with their orderly supplies, the hearth with its bed of glowing coals, the remaining lamps with their steady flames, the windows reflecting the warm interior against the darkness beyond. It is a small world, this workshop, but it is complete unto itself, lacking nothing, requiring nothing from outside except the passage of time and the changing of light. The candle maker sits in stillness, hands resting in lap, breathing slow and even. The mind is quiet now, thoughts slow and sparse, drifting through consciousness like clouds across a clear sky, never quite forming into anything solid or demanding. There is an awareness of the body sitting, of the breath moving in and out, of the warmth in the air and the softness of the lamplight. But this awareness is gentle, not sharp or analytical. It is simply presence, simply being here in this moment, in this place, part of the quiet wholeness of the evening. Time passes, though it is impossible to say how much. Minutes or hours, they are the same in this state of rest, this suspension of urgency and purpose. The candle maker simply sits, existing within the envelope of warmth and light, asking nothing, needing nothing, complete in the simplicity of being. The coals in the hearth continue their slow fade, their glow dimming gradually, the orange-red deepening toward darkness. Small shifts occur in the bed of coals as pieces settle or collapse, each movement accompanied by a soft sound, a whisper of ash or a tiny exhale of captured heat. These sounds are companionable, part of the natural process of the fire releasing its energy and returning to stillness. The candle maker listens to them without exactly hearing them, aware of them in the way one is aware of one's own heartbeat, present but not demanding attention. One of the remaining lamps flickers slightly, its flame dipping and then recovering. The oil in its reservoir is running low, and the wick is beginning to draw up the last of it, creating a brief irregularity in the burn. The candle maker watches this with mild interest, but no concern. The lamp will continue to burn for a while longer, and when it finally exhausts its oil, it will gutter and go out peacefully, adding to the gradual dimming of the workshop as night deepens toward its furthest point. The scent of beeswax still lingers in the air, though it is fainter now than it was earlier when the wax was melting and pouring. It has mingled with the other scents of the workshop, lamp oil and wood smoke and old stone, and the faint herbal sweetness left over from the tea, creating a combination that is unique to this place, to this particular evening. If the candle maker were to leave and return hours later, or days later, this scent would still be recognizable, would still speak of the work done here, of candles made with care and patience. There is a sound from outside, very faint and distant, the sound of the town clock striking the hour. The bell is far away, and its tones reach the workshop only as a soft echo, a gentle reminder that time continues its progression beyond these walls, that the world outside still turns and measures and marks its passage. The candle maker listens to the bells, counting them without quite intending to. 1, 2, 3, 4. The bells continue, and when they finish, the count has reached a late hour, one of those hours that belongs more to night than to evening, when the world is at its quietest and most deeply at rest. But the candle maker does not feel it is late. There is no sense of having stayed too long, no urgency to hurry home and find sleep. The evening has its own time, its own measure, and by that measure everything is unfolding exactly as it should. The work is complete. The workshop is peaceful. The candle maker is rested and present. Nothing more is needed. Nothing is lacking. The candle maker rises from the stool once more, moving very slowly now, as if moving through water or through air that has become thick and soft, offering gentle resistance to every motion. There is no destination in mind, no particular task to complete. The movement is simply for the sake of movement itself, a way of honoring the body and its need for occasional change of position, for the gentle stretching of muscles that have been still. A few steps carry the candle maker to one of the windows, and there is a pause there, looking out once more at the darkness beyond the glass. The night is so complete now, so total, that it seems as though the workshop is floating in a void, untethered from the earth, suspended in pure darkness. But this is an illusion created by the glass and the lamplight behind. The workshop still stands on its foundation of stone. The ground is still solid beneath it. The town still surrounds it on all sides. Nothing has changed except the quality of the darkness and the depth of the quiet. The candle maker's breath fogs the glass slightly, a small cloud of moisture that appears and then slowly fades, drawn away by the coolness of the window. Another breath, another small cloud. It is something to watch, something to notice, a tiny phenomenon that speaks of life and warmth existing within the envelope of the workshop, breath and body and presence all continuing their quiet work even in the stillness. Turning from the window, the candle maker moves toward the shelves where the finished candles were stored earlier. The wooden box that holds the wrapped candles sits on a lower shelf, its lid resting beside it, waiting to be closed. The candle maker lifts the lid, feeling its weight, examining the simple joinery that holds it together. Mortise and tenon, fitted precisely, no glue or nails needed, just wood meeting wood with perfect tolerance. It is fine work, this box, made by some carpenter long ago with the same attention to craft that the candle maker brings to the making of candles. The lid is placed carefully over the box, fitting snugly, protecting the wrapped candles within from dust and light and any damage that might come from the passage of time. The box is positioned more precisely on its shelf, aligned with the edge, creating a sense of order and rightness. Small adjustments like this matter, the candle maker knows. They contribute to the overall sense of care and attention that makes a space feel peaceful rather than chaotic, intentional rather than accidental. The candle maker moves along the shelf, making other small adjustments. A stack of papers is aligned more neatly. A jar of dried herbs is turned so that its label faces outward. A spool of wick is repositioned so that it sits more stably. None of these adjustments are necessary in any practical sense. Everything was already orderly enough, already functional. But there is value in this extra degree of care, in the attention paid to details that no one else might ever notice. It is a form of respect for the space and the work, a way of honoring what happens here. When the shelves have been tended to, the candle maker returns to the center of the workshop and stands quietly, simply being present in the space, feeling its atmosphere, its particular quality of peace. The 3 remaining lamps continue their steady glow. The coals in the hearth pulse with their deep orange light. The shadows lie soft and still in the corners and along the walls. Everything is balanced, harmonious, at rest. The candle maker's gaze falls on the empty molds that were used earlier, now clean and returned to their shelf. Tomorrow, or the day after, or sometime soon, they will be used again. More wax will be melted. More candles will be poured. The cycle will repeat, has repeated countless times before, will repeat countless times again. And each time will be both the same and different. The same tasks, the same tools, the same basic process, but always in a new moment, always in a slightly different configuration of circumstances and conditions. This is the nature of the work, the candle maker reflects. The repetition that never becomes truly repetitive because each moment is unique. Each candle is its own particular expression of form and material. Each evening brings its own quality of light and quietness. The work is not about novelty or innovation. It is about showing up, again and again, with the same patience and attention, allowing the familiar process to unfold in its familiar way, finding peace and meaning not in doing something new, but in doing something well, over and over, with care that never diminishes. The candle maker moves to the work table one last time and runs a hand slowly across its surface, feeling the smooth wood, the slight texture of its grain, the places where use has worn it even smoother. This table has been here for longer than the candle maker has been working in this place. It was here before, serving some previous candle maker, witnessing years of work before the current work began. And it will likely be here long after, serving whoever comes next, continuing its patient support of the craft practiced upon its surface. There is continuity in this, the candle maker thinks, a chain of work and workers extending backward into the past and forward into the future, all connected by this table, this workshop, this simple craft of making light from wax and flame. The candle maker is just one link in this chain, one person in a long succession of people who have found meaning and purpose in this quiet work. The thought is both humbling and comforting, a reminder that nothing done here is wasted or meaningless, that even the simplest work has value when done with care and attention. The candle maker's hand lifts from the table, and there is a moment of stillness, of transition, a sense that something is ending and something else is beginning, though what that something else might be is not yet clear. The candle maker stands beside the work table, hand still hovering just above its surface, feeling the warmth that has accumulated in the wood from the evening's work, from the proximity to lamps and the distant heat from the hearth. The wood holds warmth the way it holds memories, absorbing and storing, giving back slowly over time. The candle maker's fingers descend once more to touch the table, spreading flat against it, feeling the solidity beneath, the steadiness that has supported so much work, so many hours of patient attention. After a moment, the hand lifts away and the candle maker turns slowly, taking in the workshop once more with a gaze that is soft and unfocused, not looking for anything in particular but simply receiving what is here. The shapes and shadows, the warm glow of lamplight, the dark corners where light does not quite reach, the familiar outlines of shelves and tools and stored materials. Everything is known, everything is familiar, and yet in this deep quietness of night, everything also seems slightly transformed, as though seen for the first time, fresh and new despite countless previous viewings. The candle maker walks slowly toward the hearth, drawn by the gentle glow of the coals that still pulse with contained heat. Kneeling down beside the hearth, the candle maker extends hands toward the warmth, not touching but simply feeling the heat radiating outward, the way it envelopes the hands and wrists and forearms in its gentle embrace. The coals have broken down considerably now, no longer maintaining their original forms as pieces of wood, but instead collapsing into smaller fragments, into shapes that are organic and abstract, glowing from within like small captured suns. The heat is comforting, deeply soothing in a way that goes beyond mere physical warmth. It speaks to something ancient in human experience, to the countless generations who have sat beside fires through the long nights, who have drawn comfort and safety from flame and heat and light. The candle maker is part of this lineage too, connected across time to all those who have known the peace of sitting quietly beside a fire, watching it burn down, feeling its warmth against the coolness of night. The candle maker remains kneeling there for a long time, simply being present with the dying fire, watching the subtle changes in the coals as they shift and settle, as their glow slowly diminishes. There is no sadness in watching the fire fade. It is simply the natural progression, the completion of the fire's purpose. It has given its warmth. It has provided its service. Now it is releasing its hold on the wood, allowing everything to return to ash and stillness, completing the cycle that began when the wood was first placed in the hearth hours ago. A small flame appears suddenly among the coals, a brief flicker of yellow-orange that dances for a moment and then subsides back into the red glow. Then another flame, in a different spot, equally brief. These are the last gasps of combustion, the final burning of gases released from the wood as it breaks down. The candle maker watches these small flames with the same attention given to everything else this evening, seeing them as worthy of notice, worthy of presence, no less important than the larger flames that burned earlier. Eventually the candle maker rises from beside the hearth, knees protesting slightly from the long kneeling, and moves back toward the center of the workshop. The body is feeling the evening now, the hours of standing and moving and working, but it is a pleasant tiredness, the kind that comes from productive effort rather than strain or stress. The muscles are ready for rest, but there is no urgent demand, no desperate need. Just a gentle readiness, a willingness to settle into stillness when the time comes. The candle maker moves to the shelf where a few personal items are kept, a water flask, a small cloth for wiping hands and face, a comb, a few other simple necessities. The flask is lifted and uncorked, and the candle maker drinks slowly, feeling the water cool and clean in the mouth, down the throat, spreading through the body with its own kind of refreshment. The water is pure and simple, requiring nothing from it except that it be itself, and it offers that freely, generously, asking nothing in return. After drinking, the candle maker replaces the cork and returns the flask to its place on the shelf. The cloth is lifted and used to wipe hands once more, removing any last traces of wax or dust, cleaning away the residue of the evening's work. The cloth is soft from many washings, worn thin in places but still serviceable, still performing its function with quiet reliability. When the hands are clean, the cloth is folded carefully and returned to its place. The candle maker stands still for a moment, hands now resting at sides, feeling the cleanness of them, the way they are ready now for rest, no longer actively engaged in work, but simply existing, present and peaceful. The hands have done good work this evening, have shaped and trimmed and smoothed and cared for materials and tools with skill and attention. They deserve rest, deserve the peace that comes from work completed well. Moving to one of the windows again, the candle maker looks out into the darkness, seeing nothing beyond the glass except the reflected interior of the workshop and the vast blackness that surrounds it. The night is at its deepest point now, the hour when darkness is most complete, when the world seems most thoroughly at rest. In a few hours, the first hints of dawn will begin to appear at the horizon, the darkness will start its slow retreat, and a new day will begin. But that is still far off, still distant. For now, there is only this, the deep night, the quiet workshop, the steady glow of lamplight holding back the dark. The candle maker's reflection in the glass is clearer now, the lamplight behind creating a sharp enough contrast to make the features visible. The shape of the face, the line of the shoulders, the posture of someone at ease, relaxed and present. The candle maker looks at this reflection for a moment, acknowledging it without vanity or self-consciousness, simply seeing what is there, accepting it as part of the wholeness of this moment. Turning from the window, the candle maker begins to prepare for the final steps of the evening, the extinguishing of the remaining lamps, the settling of the workshop into complete rest. But these steps must be done slowly, carefully, with the same attention that has characterized everything else tonight. There is no rushing toward the end, no eagerness to be finished and gone. The ending, like everything else, deserves its time, its space, its full measure of presence. The candle maker moves to the first of the 3 remaining lamps, the one farthest from the work table. A hand reaches out and slowly turns the small wheel that controls the wick height, lowering it gradually, watching as the flame diminishes in response. The flame grows smaller, its light contracting, the shadows around it deepening and spreading. Lower and lower the wick descends, and the flame shrinks until it is just a tiny point of light, barely visible, and then with a final small adjustment, it goes out completely. There is a moment of transition as the workshop adjusts to the loss of this light source. The remaining 2 lamps seem brighter now by contrast, their flames more prominent, their pools of light more defined. The shadows have grown deeper in the area where the extinguished lamp sits, and the balance of light and dark in the workshop has shifted slightly. The candle maker stands still for a moment, allowing eyes to adjust, allowing the new configuration of light to become familiar. Then, moving slowly across the workshop, the candle maker approaches the second lamp. This one sits near the shelves, and its light has been illuminating the stored supplies, casting soft shadows among the jars and boxes and spools. The same careful hand reaches out, the same gentle turning of the wheel, the same gradual diminishment of flame. The light fades, the shadows spread, and then the flame is gone, leaving only a thin wisp of smoke that rises and dissipates in the still air. Now there is only 1 lamp remaining, and it sits on the work table itself, the last source of manufactured light in the workshop aside from the faint glow of the coals in the hearth. The candle maker stands beside this lamp for a long moment before reaching for it, honoring it somehow, acknowledging the service it has provided through the long evening, the steady light it has given without complaint or faltering. The glass chimney is warm when the candle maker lifts it, setting it carefully aside. The flame beneath burns naked now, slightly more visible without the glass surrounding it, its movement more apparent in the free air. But the candle maker does not extinguish this flame yet. Instead, there is a pause, a moment of simply standing beside this last light, watching it burn, feeling its warmth, smelling the faint scent of the lamp oil as it feeds the flame. This lamp will be the last to go out, and when it does, the workshop will be left with only the faint glow from the hearth, the deep red pulse of the dying coals. The transition from light to near darkness deserves to be marked, deserves a moment of acknowledgement. The flame dances slightly in some current of air too subtle to feel, and the candle maker watches this dance with full attention, seeing the way the flame moves, the way it responds to invisible forces, the way it maintains its essential nature as flame, even while constantly changing shape and position. There is something mesmerizing in watching flame, something that has captured human attention since fire was first discovered, since the first person sat beside the first fire and watched it burn, and found in it both utility and beauty. The candle maker's breathing has slowed even further now, each breath deep and full, expanding the chest and belly, then releasing completely, emptying fully before the next breath begins. This rhythm of breath has become synchronized somehow with the flickering of the flame, or perhaps it only seems that way. Perhaps the mind is finding patterns and connections where none objectively exist. But it doesn't matter whether the synchronization is real or imagined. What matters is the sense of harmony, the feeling of being in rhythm with something larger than oneself, of participating in the fundamental patterns of existence, breath and flame, inhalation and combustion, life and light intertwined. The candle maker reaches out slowly and places a hand on the work table, feeling its solidity one more time, grounding in the physical reality of wood and weight and support. The other hand hovers near the lamp, near the flame, feeling the heat that rises from it, the warmth that it continues to give even in these final moments before being extinguished. The workshop seems to be holding its breath, waiting, suspended in this moment of transition between having light and being ready to release it. The candle maker's fingers close around the small wheel that controls the wick, but they do not yet turn it. There is a last moment of presence, a final acknowledgement of the light and what it has meant through this evening, the visibility it has provided, the warmth it has contributed, the way it has helped create this atmosphere of peace and safety and containment. The light has been a companion through the work, a silent presence that asked nothing and gave everything, and it deserves gratitude, deserves recognition before it is released. And then slowly the wheel begins to turn. The wick descends into the oil. The flame grows smaller, contracting, its light diminishing moment by moment. The workshop darkens around it, shadows spreading like water, flowing into all the spaces that the light had held back. Smaller and smaller the flame becomes, a pinpoint now, a tiny spark, and then it goes out. The darkness is sudden and complete, broken only by the faint red glow from the hearth across the room. The candle maker stands perfectly still in this new darkness, allowing the eyes to adjust, allowing the other senses to compensate for the loss of vision. The workshop is not completely dark. The coals in the hearth provide just enough light to see the vaguest outlines of shapes, the bulkier pieces of furniture, the edges of walls and doorways. But details have vanished. Colors have disappeared. Everything has been reduced to shapes and shadows, and the subtle gradations between deeper and lighter darkness. The candle maker's breathing continues its slow, steady rhythm, unchanged by the darkness, untroubled by the loss of light. The hands remain where they were, one on the work table, one near the extinguished lamp, both steady and calm. The heart beats its regular rhythm. The body stands balanced and at ease. The darkness is not frightening or disorienting. It is simply another state, another way of being in the workshop, another aspect of the evening's gentle progression toward rest. After a time, impossible to say how long in the darkness, without visual reference points to mark the passage of moments, the candle maker begins to move. The movements are slow and careful, not from fear of collision, but from respect for the darkness, from a desire to move through it with the same care and attention that has characterized the entire evening. The candle maker knows this space intimately, could navigate it blindfolded, and the darkness is not so different from that, not so complete that all sense of position and direction is lost. Step by step, the candle maker crosses the workshop, moving toward the hearth where the coals still glow. The journey is short, but it feels longer in the darkness, each step deliberate and measured, each placement of foot confirmed before the next step is taken. The workshop is utterly silent now except for the soft sound of footsteps and breathing, and these sounds seem amplified in the darkness, more present somehow than they were when competing with lamplight and all that light makes visible. The candle maker reaches the hearth and kneels down beside it once more, feeling the warmth still radiating from the coals, seeing their dim red glow more clearly now that the eyes have fully adjusted to the darkness. The coals are much diminished from what they were earlier, broken down into smaller pieces, their glow fainter but still persistent, still giving off heat and the faintest light. They will continue like this for some time yet, gradually cooling, gradually fading, until eventually they are nothing but ash and darkness, indistinguishable from the stone of the hearth that contains them. The candle maker sits down fully now, not kneeling but sitting cross-legged on the floor beside the hearth, settling into this position with a sense of finality, of having arrived at the last station of the evening's journey. The floor is cool and hard, but not uncomfortable, and the warmth from the hearth provides enough heat to make sitting here pleasant rather than cold. This is where the evening will end, here beside the dying fire, in the near darkness, in the deep quiet that has settled over everything. The candle maker sits beside the hearth in the near darkness, body settling more deeply into the position, spine straight but not rigid, hands resting gently on knees, breathing slow and even. The workshop surrounds the candle maker like a protective shell, its walls solid and familiar, even though they cannot be seen in the darkness, its ceiling arching overhead, its floor supporting from below. Everything is still here, unchanged by the absence of light, existing in the darkness just as it existed in the lamplight, constant and reliable and safe. The coals pulse with their faint red glow, and the candle maker watches them with half-closed eyes, not focusing sharply but allowing the gaze to soften, to receive the light without grasping at it. The red glow is hypnotic in its steadiness, in the way it neither flickers nor remains completely static, but exists in some middle state between the two, a gentle undulation of light and heat that speaks of energy slowly being released, of stored warmth gradually returning to the surrounding air. In the darkness, other senses come more fully alive. The candle maker becomes more aware of sounds, the faint settling of wood as the workshop adjusts to the cooling of evening, the barely audible whisper of air moving through some crack or gap in the walls, the soft occasional pop from the hearth as a pocket of trapped moisture or resin finds release in the heat of the coals. These are tiny sounds, insignificant sounds, sounds that would go completely unnoticed in the brightness of day or even in the lamplight of earlier evening. But here now, in the darkness and quiet, they become present and noticeable, small companions to the silence rather than disturbances of it. The sense of smell sharpens too. The scent of beeswax is still there, underlying everything, but other scents emerge more clearly now. The mustiness of old stone, the faint mineral smell of the hearth itself, the wood smoke that has been absorbed into every surface over years of fires, the clean smell of the swept floor, the slight metallic tang of the iron tools hanging on the walls. These scents combine to create the particular signature of this place, the olfactory fingerprint that marks it as unique, that would allow someone blindfolded to know where they were simply by breathing in. The sense of touch becomes more acute as well. The candle maker feels the texture of the floor through the fabric of clothing, feels the movement of air against exposed skin, face and hands and neck, feels the way warmth radiates from the hearth in subtle waves, stronger and weaker by turns as the coals shift and settle. There is an awareness of the body's position in space, of the weight distributed across the sitting bones, of the gentle work of muscles maintaining posture, of the rise and fall of chest with each breath. The candle maker sits in this heightened awareness, not thinking about it, not analyzing or categorizing the sensations, but simply experiencing them, allowing them to be present without needing to do anything with them. This is a form of meditation, though the candle maker would not use that word, would not think of it in those terms. It is simply sitting, simply being present, simply allowing the moment to be exactly what it is without adding anything to it or taking anything away from it. Time becomes even more fluid and indefinite in the darkness. Without visual reference points, without the changing angle of lamplight or the visible progression of work tasks, there is no way to measure its passage. The candle maker sits, and the sitting extends indefinitely, neither short nor long, neither hurried nor lingering. It simply is, existing outside the usual framework of temporal measurement, outside the categories of before and after, sooner and later. There is only now, stretched out like the darkness itself, without boundaries or limits. The candle maker's thoughts, which have been quiet and sparse throughout the evening, become even more still. They do not disappear entirely. The mind continues its basic functioning, continues to register sensations and maintain awareness, but they lose their usual density and urgency. Thoughts arise and dissipate like smoke, never quite forming into anything substantial, never demanding attention or action. There is no problem to solve, no decision to make, no question to answer. There is only this sitting, this breathing, this being present in the darkness beside the dying fire. A memory surfaces, unbidden and gentle, the memory of learning to make candles many years ago, sitting beside someone older and more experienced, watching hands that knew the work guide the process, absorb the lessons not through words but through observation and imitation. The memory is not sharp or detailed. The face of the teacher is unclear, the specific words spoken are lost. But the feeling remains, the feeling of being cared for, of being taught with patience, of being given a skill that would last a lifetime, a way of working that would provide both livelihood and peace. The memory fades as gently as it arose, leaving no trace of sadness or longing, no wish to return to that time or change what has passed. It is simply a reminder of connection, of the way knowledge and skill pass from person to person, generation to generation, creating lineages of practice that extend far beyond any individual life. The candle maker is part of such a lineage, a link in a chain that extends backward into the past and forward into the future, and there is comfort in this, a sense of belonging to something larger than oneself. The coals in the hearth have faded further. Their glow is dimmer now, less red and more orange, the color deepening toward the edge of visibility. Soon they will fade below the threshold where they can be seen at all, will continue to release their heat in complete darkness, will become invisible while still being present, still performing their function of slowly cooling, slowly returning to ash. The candle maker watches this fading with acceptance, with no desire to add more wood, to revive the fire, to resist the natural progression toward completion and rest. The workshop is very cold now in the areas farthest from the hearth. The warmth that accumulated during the evening has begun to dissipate, radiating out through the walls and floor and ceiling, equalizing with the temperature of the night outside. The candle maker feels this cooling, but is not uncomfortable. The hearth still provides warmth enough for sitting here, and the body has its own warmth, its own core heat that sustains and protects even in the absence of external sources. There is no need for more fire, no need for more light. What is here is sufficient. What is present is enough. The candle maker shifts position slightly, uncrossing and recrossing legs in a different configuration, allowing circulation to return to areas that have been compressed, feeling the pleasant tingle of blood flowing more freely. The movement is small and unhurried, and when it is complete, the stillness returns, deeper than before, more settled. The body has found a position it can maintain comfortably, and it relaxes more fully into it, releasing tensions that were so subtle they were not consciously felt, but that disappear nonetheless, leaving greater ease, greater peace. The darkness is complete now. The coals have faded to the point where they give off no visible light, though they still radiate heat that can be felt when hands are extended toward them. The workshop exists now in a darkness that is as total as the darkness outside, the two darknesses merging, the boundary between inside and outside becoming less distinct. And yet the workshop still feels enclosed, still feels separate, still maintains its quality of being a protected space, even in the absence of any visual confirmation of walls or doors or ceiling. The candle maker sits in this complete darkness, breathing slowly, existing in a state that is neither quite waking nor quite sleeping, somewhere in between, in that liminal space where consciousness becomes diffuse and boundaries soften. The body is still upright, still maintaining its seated position, but awareness of it has become less sharp, less defined. There is a sense of floating, of being suspended in the darkness, held gently by the earth and the air and the residual warmth from the hearth. Sounds continue their quiet presence, the settling of wood, the whisper of air, the occasional pop from the hearth. These sounds arise in the darkness and fade back into it, appearing and disappearing like thoughts, like breaths, part of the continuous flow of existence that continues whether noticed or not, whether attended to or ignored. The candle maker's awareness registers these sounds without fixing on them, without following them or analyzing them, simply allowing them to be part of the wholeness of the moment. Time passes, how much is impossible to say. The candle maker sits in the darkness, breathing, being present, existing in this state of restful awareness that asks nothing and needs nothing. The evening has reached its deepest point, its furthest extension into rest and quiet and peace. There is nowhere to go from here, no next thing to do, no goal to achieve or task to complete. There is only this, the sitting, the breathing, the being here in the darkness beside the hearth that no longer glows, in the workshop that has settled into complete rest. The candle maker's body sways slightly, a gentle rocking motion that is not consciously initiated, but that arises naturally, some instinctive movement that seeks comfort or balance, or perhaps simply expression. The swaying is slow and minimal, barely perceptible, a small rhythm that matches the rhythm of breath, that harmonizes with the deeper rhythms of heartbeat and circulation, and all the quiet processes that keep the body alive and functioning even in this state of deep rest. The mind has become very still now, thoughts barely arising at all, awareness reduced to the most basic registration of sensation and presence. There is no narrative voice commenting on experience, no internal dialogue discussing or analyzing or planning. There is only awareness itself, pure and simple, existing without elaboration or complication, like a clear pool of water that reflects whatever passes over it without being disturbed or changed by the reflection. In this stillness, in this darkness, in this state of complete rest, the candle maker exists in a kind of peace that goes beyond mere absence of disturbance. It is a positive peace, an active peace, a peace that is itself a form of presence and being. It is the peace that comes from being exactly where one is meant to be, doing exactly what one is meant to be doing, which in this moment is nothing more than sitting, breathing, existing in the darkness beside the hearth in the workshop where candles are made. The candle maker's breathing has become so slow and so quiet that it is barely noticeable, barely enough to sustain consciousness, existing right at the edge where waking meets sleeping, where presence meets absence, where being meets not being. And yet consciousness remains, awareness continues, the candle maker is still here, still present, still existing in this moment, even though the moment has become so quiet and so still that it seems almost to have stopped, to have paused in its progression, to have opened into something eternal and unchanging. The darkness is complete. The silence is profound. The stillness is absolute. And in the midst of all this darkness and silence and stillness, the candle maker sits, breathing, being present, a small point of awareness and life and warmth in the encompassing night, neither resisting the darkness nor seeking the light, simply existing in the wholeness of what is, accepting completely this moment and this place and this state of being. The workshop holds the candle maker in its embrace, invisible but present, solid but unseen, a container for this sitting, this resting, this being. The walls surround. The floor supports. The ceiling protects from above. And within this enclosure, the candle maker sits in perfect stillness, in complete peace, in a state of rest so deep and so complete that it seems to merge with the darkness itself, to become indistinguishable from the silence, to dissolve into the quiet wholeness of the night. Time continues its passage, unmeasured and unmeasurable in the darkness. The night moves through its deepest hours, the time when the world is most thoroughly at rest, when even the nocturnal creatures have grown quiet, when the earth itself seems to pause in its turning and simply exist, suspended in the vast darkness of space, floating in the infinite quiet of the universe. And in the small workshop at the end of a quiet lane in a sleeping town, the candle maker sits beside the hearth where no light remains, in the darkness that is complete, in the silence that is profound, in the stillness that is absolute, existing in a state of rest and peace and presence that is both the simplest and the most profound state a person can achieve. The state of simply being here, now exactly as things are, asking nothing, needing nothing, complete in the wholeness of this moment. That extends indefinitely in all directions, without beginning or end, without boundary or limit, simply existing, simply being, simply here. The candle maker sits in the encompassing darkness, body and breath and awareness all merged into a single continuous presence, a stillness so complete that it seems to have no edges, no boundaries between self and space, between being and environment. The darkness is not an absence now but a presence in itself, thick and soft and enfolding, like a blanket woven from silence and shadow, wrapped around the candle maker with infinite gentleness, infinite care. The hearth beside the candle maker no longer gives off any visible glow, but warmth still radiates from the stones, a gentle heat that has been absorbed during the evening's fire, and is now being released slowly, gradually, back into the workshop air. The stones hold this warmth patiently, giving it up bit by bit, in no hurry to return to the coolness of night. The candle maker feels this warmth against one side of the body, feels the subtle gradient between the warmer air near the hearth and the cooler air throughout the rest of the workshop. This gradient creates the gentlest of movements in the air, a circulation too slight to be called a draft but present nonetheless, a slow turning of warm and cool that continues its invisible dance in the darkness. The candle maker's awareness floats in this darkness like a leaf floating on still water, not actively attending to anything in particular, but simply present, simply here, receptive to whatever arises without grasping at it or pushing it away. There is no effort in this awareness, no strain of maintaining attention or focus. It is effortless, natural, like breathing itself, like the beating of the heart, functions that continue without needing conscious direction or control. A sound emerges from the darkness, a very faint creaking, the sound of old wood expanding or contracting in response to temperature changes, the walls or floor or ceiling making tiny adjustments as the workshop cools. The sound is so quiet that it exists right at the threshold of hearing, and the candle maker's awareness registers it without quite identifying what it is, without needing to name it or understand its source. It is simply sound, arising in silence and returning to silence, a small ripple in the vast quiet that surrounds everything. The candle maker's body has become very heavy now, settled deeply into the floor, as if gravity has increased its pull, as if the earth is drawing the body more firmly into its embrace. There is no discomfort in this heaviness, no sense of being weighed down or oppressed. It is a pleasant heaviness, a heaviness that speaks of relaxation and release, of muscles that have let go of all unnecessary tension, of a body that has surrendered completely to rest. The head has begun to drop forward slightly, chin moving toward chest, and the candle maker allows this movement, does not resist it or try to maintain a more formal posture. The body knows what it needs, knows how to arrange itself for maximum comfort and rest. The breathing has slowed even further, each breath taking a long time to complete, the inhalation gentle and unhurried, filling the lungs gradually from bottom to top, the exhalation equally gentle, releasing the air smoothly and completely. Between breaths, there are pauses, moments when no air moves in or out, when the body simply rests in stillness, needing nothing, doing nothing, simply existing in the space between one breath and the next. These pauses grow longer, extend further, and in them there is a quality of timelessness, a sense that the pause could continue indefinitely without any problem or distress, that breathing is optional rather than necessary, that existence itself is so complete and so perfect in these moments that nothing needs to be added or maintained or sustained. But then, naturally, without effort or decision, the next breath begins, the lungs expand again, air flows in again, and the cycle continues, the ancient rhythm of respiration that has continued since the first moment of life, and will continue until the last, the rhythm that connects all living things, that marks the boundary between being alive and not being alive, and yet that happens so quietly and so automatically that it goes unnoticed most of the time, existing below the threshold of conscious awareness, a gift of the body to itself, a sustaining function that requires no thought or attention to continue. The darkness presses close now, but not oppressively, not threateningly. It presses close the way a blanket presses against skin, the way water presses against a body immersed in it, with gentle uniform pressure that is barely felt, that becomes part of the background of sensation, noticed only when attention is directed toward it, and then fading back into unawareness when attention moves elsewhere. The candle maker exists within this pressure, within this darkness, held by it, supported by it, as safe and secure as a child held in caring arms, as protected and at peace as anything can be. Time has lost all meaning now. There is no sense of duration, no feeling of minutes or hours passing. There is only this eternal present, this now that stretches infinitely in all directions, containing everything, lacking nothing. The candle maker has no awareness of how long the sitting has continued, no concern about how much longer it might continue, no thought of what will come next or what came before. There is only this, the sitting, the breathing, the being present in darkness and silence and stillness. Thoughts arise occasionally, like bubbles rising to the surface of still water, but they are barely formed, barely coherent, fragments of ideas or images that appear and dissipate almost immediately, leaving no trace, creating no disturbance in the underlying stillness. A fleeting memory of the candles made earlier, a brief awareness of the workshop surrounding, a momentary sensation of bodily comfort or slight stiffness. These arise and pass away, and the candle maker's awareness observes them without becoming entangled in them, without following them or elaborating on them, simply letting them be what they are, temporary phenomena appearing in consciousness and disappearing back into it. The darkness itself seems to pulse very gently, to breathe with a rhythm that matches the candle maker's breathing, or perhaps it is the other way around. Perhaps the candle maker's breathing has entrained itself to some fundamental rhythm of the darkness, some basic oscillation of the universe itself. It is impossible to tell which is leading and which is following, or whether there is any distinction at all, whether the breathing and the darkness and the silence and the stillness are not all part of one unified whole, one single reality that expresses itself in these various forms, but that is ultimately undivided, ultimately one. The candle maker's awareness has become so diffuse now, so spread out through the darkness, that there is barely any sense of being located in a particular body or a particular place. Awareness seems to extend through the entire workshop, to include the walls and floor and ceiling, to encompass the tools on the shelves and the candles stored away, and the cold hearth and the still air, and the encompassing darkness all at once, all as part of a single unified field of awareness that has no center and no boundary, that simply is, without location or limitation. And yet, paradoxically, there is also a very precise sense of being right here, right now, in this body, on this floor, beside this hearth. The two experiences exist simultaneously, the diffuse expansiveness and the precise localization, without contradiction or conflict. The candle maker is both everywhere and right here, both boundless and precisely located, both infinite and finite, and these apparent contradictions are not problems to be solved, but simply the way things are, the way consciousness manifests in this moment of deep rest and profound peace. A feeling arises, though it is barely a feeling, barely definite enough to be named. It is something like gratitude, something like contentment, something like love, but purer than any of these, simpler than any of these, a fundamental rightness that needs no object and no reason, that is not gratitude for anything or contentment with anything or love of anything, but simply is arising from the depths of being itself, from the ground of existence, a pure positive quality that pervades everything, that colors all experience with its gentle warmth. The candle maker sits in this feeling, with this feeling, as this feeling, the boundaries between experiencer and experience having dissolved completely, leaving only the experience itself, the feeling itself, the being itself. There is no one sitting beside the hearth in the darkness. There is only sitting, only darkness, only the profound peace that has no owner and needs no owner, that exists for its own sake, that is complete in itself. The night continues outside, moving through its appointed hours, progressing toward the eventual return of dawn, though dawn is still far away, still beyond the horizon, still waiting in the future that has not yet arrived. The town sleeps around the workshop, houses full of sleeping people, streets empty and still, all the activity of day suspended, put aside, allowed to rest while darkness holds its dominion over the land. The world turns on its axis, rotating through space, carrying the town and the workshop and the candle maker with it, though none of this rotation is felt or perceived, though everything seems perfectly still, perfectly stable, perfectly at rest. Inside the workshop, nothing moves. The air is still. The shadows are unchanging. The darkness is complete and constant. The candle maker sits in perfect stillness, body unmoving, breath barely perceptible, awareness hovering in a state between waking and sleeping, between presence and absence, between being and not being. It is a state of such profound rest that it borders on the absolute, on the complete cessation of all activity, and yet consciousness remains, awareness continues, presence persists, a small flame of knowing that continues to burn even in the absence of any fuel, any sustenance, any reason to continue. The candle maker's head is dropped forward more now, chin resting against chest, shoulders rounded, spine curved, the whole body folding in on itself, returning to a posture that suggests sleep or deep meditation or complete surrender to rest. The hands have slipped from knees to rest in lap, palms upward, fingers softly curled, receiving rather than grasping, open rather than closed. The legs have shifted slightly, finding a position that can be maintained without effort, without the need for any muscular engagement or active holding. The entire body has arranged itself for maximum ease, maximum comfort, maximum rest, and having found this arrangement, it has become completely still as stone, as still as the walls around it, as still as the night itself. Breathing continues, but so slowly now, so gently, that it is barely happening at all. Each breath takes an age to complete, the inhalation lasting for uncounted seconds, the exhalation equally prolonged, and between them the pauses stretch out longer and longer, extending into what seems like forever, into a timelessness that has no end and no beginning, that simply exists in an eternal now. And in these pauses, in this space between breaths, there is a quality of absolute peace, of perfect stillness, of complete rest that goes beyond anything that can be described or explained or captured in words. It is a state that must be experienced to be known, and even in experiencing it there is no knowing it in the usual sense, no comprehension or understanding or analysis. There is only being it, being this peace, being this stillness, being this rest. The darkness has become total, absolute, complete in every direction. There is no differentiation within it, no variation of lighter and darker, no sense of depth or distance. It is a uniform darkness that could be inches away or miles away, that could be the darkness of the workshop or the darkness of infinite space, and there is no way to tell the difference, no way to distinguish between the darkness that is near and the darkness that is far. All darkness has become one darkness, all space has become one space, and the candle maker exists within it or as it, the distinction no longer clear or relevant. Time has stopped, or has become so slow that it might as well have stopped, or has transformed into something that is no longer time in any recognizable sense, but something else, some other dimension of existence that has no name, no measurement, no quality that can be grasped or understood. The candle maker exists in this not time, this beyond time, suspended in an eternal moment that never ends because it never began, that simply is, always has been, always will be, outside the flow of temporal progression, outside the movement from past to future, existing in a pure present that is the only thing that has ever really existed, the only reality that is not a concept or a memory or a projection, but is actual, immediate, undeniable. And in this eternal moment, in this absolute darkness, in this profound silence and stillness, the candle maker rests, breathing slowly, barely conscious, barely present, existing on the threshold between being and not being, between waking and sleeping, between life and the deep peace that underlies all life, that is the source and ground of all existence, that continues whether noticed or not, whether acknowledged or ignored, that is always here, always available, always waiting to receive. Anyone who surrenders completely to rest, who lets go of all doing and striving and becoming and simply allows themselves to be, to exist, to rest in the fundamental peace that is their deepest nature, their truest self, their ultimate home. The candle maker rests in the darkness, body folded and still, awareness barely flickering like the last ember of a fire that has almost but not quite gone out. The state is one of such deep rest that it approaches something beyond rest, something that has no name in ordinary language, a dissolution of the usual boundaries between self and world, between sleeping and waking, between existence and pure being. The workshop has become a vessel for this state, holding it gently, protecting it, allowing it to deepen and extend without interruption or disturbance. The silence is so complete now that it has a quality almost of sound, a deep ringing stillness that fills the ears, a presence rather than an absence. The candle maker's awareness, diffuse and barely coherent, registers this silence as a kind of music, a single sustained note that has no beginning and no end, that simply exists in eternal wholeness, perfect and complete in itself. This silence that is like music pervades everything, fills everything, becomes everything, and the candle maker floats within it like a note dissolving into its own resonance, merging with the fundamental tone, becoming indistinguishable from it. The body continues its minimal functioning, heart beating with slow, steady rhythm, lungs expanding and contracting in their ancient pattern, blood circulating through vessels and capillaries, cells performing their quiet work of maintenance and repair. All of this happens without conscious direction, without awareness or attention, the body's wisdom sustaining itself while consciousness drifts in deeper waters, exploring territories beyond thought and intention. The body is a faithful servant, continuing its work even when abandoned by active attention, keeping watch while awareness travels far from the ordinary concerns of embodied existence. A dream begins to form, or something like a dream, though the candle maker is not quite asleep, not quite awake, existing in a liminal state where the boundaries between dreaming and waking have become porous, permeable. In this dream that is not quite a dream, there are candles, of course, but they are not ordinary candles. They are made of light itself, requiring no wax or wick, burning without consuming anything, eternal flames that need no fuel. They stand in rows that extend infinitely in all directions, each one perfect, each one identical, and yet each one somehow unique, individual, its own particular expression of the universal light. The candle maker moves among these impossible candles, or watches them from a distance, or perhaps is one of them. The perspective shifts and changes, unstable, fluid, refusing to fix itself into any single viewpoint. There is a sense of great peace in this vision, a feeling that all the work of making candles, all the years of patient attention and careful craft, have been leading to this, the understanding that the candles were never really about wax and flame at all, that they were always about something else, something that the wax and flame only pointed toward, only suggested, only hinted at in their brief burning. The vision fades gradually, dissolving back into the darkness, leaving behind only a residue of feeling, a sense of rightness and completion that has no specific content, no particular meaning, but that pervades the candle maker's awareness like perfume pervades air, invisible but undeniably present. The candle maker's breathing deepens slightly, a long, slow exhalation that seems to release something, to let go of something that was being held, and in the wake of this release there is even greater peace, even deeper rest. The workshop continues its silent vigil, holding the candle maker in its embrace, protecting this deep rest from any disturbance. The walls stand solid and unmovable, having stood for generations, having witnessed countless nights like this one, countless workers sitting in darkness beside dying fires, countless moments of peace and rest and surrender to the stillness of night. The walls know this rhythm, have absorbed it over years of repetition, and they emanate it now, giving back to the candle maker some portion of all the peace they have witnessed, all the rest they have held and protected. The floor supports from below, faithful and steady, never wavering, never failing in its simple task of providing a surface, a foundation, a ground on which the candle maker can sit and rest, and let go of all concern about falling or collapsing or losing support. The floor is always there, always reliable, always fulfilling its purpose without complaint or demand, and this reliability is itself a form of peace, a reminder that some things can be trusted completely, that some foundations never shift or give way. The ceiling arches overhead, invisible in the darkness but felt nonetheless, a protective cover that keeps the workshop enclosed, that maintains the boundary between inside and outside, that allows this space to be separate from the larger world, to be a refuge, a sanctuary, a place apart where rest can deepen without limit. The ceiling asks nothing, gives only protection, only shelter, only the simple gift of enclosure that makes sanctuary possible. The candle maker exists within this architecture of protection and peace, held by walls and floor and ceiling, contained within a structure that has no other purpose than to provide space for work and rest, for making and being. The workshop is not grand or elaborate. It makes no claims to beauty or significance. It is simply what it is, a modest space built for a modest purpose, fulfilling that purpose faithfully year after year, asking nothing more than to be maintained and used and appreciated for what it offers. Time continues its strange behavior, neither passing nor standing still, but existing in some third state that is neither movement nor stillness, but something that includes both and transcends both. The candle maker has no sense of duration, no feeling of waiting or remaining, no anticipation of what might come next. There is only this endless now, this present moment that contains all moments, that is sufficient unto itself, that needs no future and carries no past, that simply is, forever and always, the only time that has ever really existed. The darkness begins to change, though the change is so gradual that it is barely perceptible, so slow that it might be imagined rather than real. But no, it is real. The darkness is becoming less absolute, less total. Not lighter, exactly, not yet, but less dense, less impenetrable. It is as though the darkness itself is beginning to thin, to become more transparent, though to what it is becoming transparent is not yet clear. The change is like the change in the sky just before dawn, when the darkness has not yet given way to light, but has begun to acknowledge that light exists, that light will return, that the reign of darkness is not eternal but temporary, part of a cycle that turns endlessly between day and night, light and shadow, visibility and obscurity. The candle maker's awareness registers this change without fully awakening to it, without emerging from the deep rest into active consciousness. It is registered the way a sleeping person registers the approach of morning, not consciously, not with alert attention, but at some deeper level, some instinctual place that knows the rhythms of day and night and responds to them without needing to think about them or understand them. The body knows that something is changing, that the night is moving toward its conclusion, that the time of deepest rest is passing, and something else is beginning to emerge. But this emergence is slow, infinitely slow, respectful of the depth of rest that has been achieved, unwilling to disturb it too quickly or too harshly. The change creeps forward with the patience of seasons changing, of tides turning, of all natural processes that operate on their own timeline, indifferent to human hurry or impatience. The darkness thins by imperceptible degrees. The silence remains profound. The stillness continues unbroken. And the candle maker rests, suspended in this timeless moment that is beginning, so gradually, so gently, to evolve into something else. The hearthstones, which have been slowly releasing their stored warmth throughout the long hours of sitting, have cooled considerably now. They are no longer warm to the touch, no longer radiating heat into the surrounding air. They have returned almost to the ambient temperature of the workshop, having given back all that they absorbed during the evening's fire. And yet they retain some memory of that warmth, some quality that distinguishes them from stones that have never been heated, never held fire, never participated in the transformation of wood into light and heat. They are stones that know fire, that have fulfilled their purpose, that rest now in the satisfaction of work well done. The candle maker shifts slightly, a tiny movement, barely a movement at all, just a microscopic adjustment of position, a small response to some slight stiffness or discomfort that has begun to make itself known. The movement is unconscious, automatic, the body taking care of itself while awareness remains distant, still immersed in the deep rest. But the movement is also a sign, a marker of transition, an indication that the profound stillness is beginning to lighten, that the journey through the depths of rest has reached its furthest point and is beginning, so slowly, so gradually, to turn back toward the surface, toward activity, toward the resumption of ordinary consciousness. But this return is in no way hasty or forced. It happens at its own pace, following its own timeline, as natural and unhurried as the approach of dawn. The candle maker's breathing begins to deepen slightly, to take on a quality that is more clearly recognizable as the breathing of someone approaching wakefulness, rather than the barely perceptible breathing of someone at the absolute depths of rest. The chest expands more fully. The exhalations become more complete. The pauses between breaths grow shorter. The rhythm begins to quicken, almost imperceptibly, moving toward the pace of ordinary waking consciousness while still retaining much of the slowness and gentleness of deep rest. The darkness in the workshop is definitely less absolute now. Though still deep and encompassing, though still concealing all details and dissolving all distinctions, it has begun to acknowledge the existence of something beyond itself. The change is like the difference between midnight and the hours just before dawn. Both are dark, both are night, but there is a quality to the pre-dawn darkness that is different, that carries within it a sense of impermanence, a knowledge that its time is limited, that light is waiting just beyond the horizon, gathering its strength for the return. The candle maker's awareness begins to gather itself, to coalesce from its scattered diffuse state back into something more concentrated, more localized. There is a gradual return of the sense of being located in a particular body, in a particular place. The feeling of boundless expansion, of consciousness extended through the entire workshop and beyond, begins to contract, to draw back toward a center, toward the familiar sense of being a self, a person, an individual existing in time and space. This return is not a loss, not a falling away from some higher state. It is simply a transition, a movement from one mode of being to another, each valid in its own way, each appropriate to its own time and purpose. The workshop begins to become perceptible again as a distinct space, separate from the darkness outside it. The walls resume their positions as boundaries. The floor reasserts itself as a surface beneath. The ceiling returns to its role as a protective covering above. The architecture of the space reconstructs itself in awareness, not yet visible but felt, known, remembered. The candle maker is inside the workshop, sitting on the floor beside the cold hearth, in the darkness that is beginning so gradually, so gently to give way to something else. Sensation returns more clearly to the body. The coolness of the floor can be felt more distinctly now. The slight stiffness in the legs from sitting so long becomes more apparent. The dryness in the mouth, the slight ache in the lower back, the various small discomforts that accompany a body that has been still for a long time. These make themselves known, not insistently, not demandingly, but gently, quietly, asking for attention and care. The body is ready now to move, to stretch, to shift position, to begin the slow process of returning to activity after this long period of profound rest. But still the candle maker does not move, not yet, not quite yet. There is no hurry to break this spell, to shatter this peace, to rush back into ordinary consciousness and ordinary activity. The rest has been deep and good and healing, and it deserves to be honored, to be allowed to complete itself in its own time, at its own pace. The candle maker remains sitting, breathing slowly, allowing the transition to happen naturally, without forcing it, without rushing it, simply being present to whatever is arising, whatever is changing, whatever is emerging from the depths of the night. The darkness continues its slow retreat, thinning and lightening by imperceptible degrees, not yet revealing anything, not yet allowing visibility, but moving in that direction, preparing the way, making ready for the return of light and sight and all that comes with them. The workshop waits in this pregnant darkness, this expectant stillness poised between night and day, between rest and activity, between being and doing, holding this moment of transition with infinite patience, infinite care, allowing everything to unfold exactly as it needs to unfold, in perfect time, in perfect harmony with the great cycles that govern all things. The candle maker sits in the thinning darkness, breathing slowly, feeling the gradual return of ordinary awareness, of the familiar sense of being a person in a place at a time. The transition is gentle, unhurried, like waking from a deep and dreamless sleep, except that the candle maker has not exactly been sleeping, has been in some state between sleep and waking, some territory that has no clear name or definition. Now that state is releasing its hold, allowing consciousness to return to its usual patterns, its customary ways of organizing experience and making sense of the world. The body makes itself known more insistently now, its needs and discomforts requesting attention. The legs have gone somewhat numb from their long stillness, and there is a tingling sensation as circulation begins to return more fully, as blood flows more freely through vessels that have been compressed. The candle maker flexes the feet slightly, wiggling toes inside their coverings, encouraging movement and sensation to return. The small motion sends gentle waves of pins and needles through the legs, not painful but noticeable, a reminder that the body has limits, that even rest must eventually give way to movement. Slowly, very slowly, the candle maker begins to unfold from the sitting position. Hands press against the floor, supporting the body as weight is shifted. The legs straighten gradually, reluctantly, muscles protesting slightly after their long inactivity. The spine uncurls, vertebra by vertebra, the head lifting from its dropped position, rising until it balances once more atop the column of the spine. The movements are careful and deliberate, respecting the body's stiffness, giving muscles and joints time to remember their function, to return to their ordinary work of supporting and moving. When fully upright, the candle maker remains still for a moment, swaying slightly as balance reasserts itself, as the body adjusts to being vertical again after so long spent folded and still. The darkness is still deep enough that nothing can be seen clearly, but the candle maker knows this space intimately, could navigate it blindfolded, and there is no fear of stumbling or collision. The feet know where they are. The body knows the dimensions of the workshop. Memory and familiarity provide guidance where sight cannot. The candle maker stretches slowly, raising arms overhead, feeling the spine lengthen, the ribs expand, the breath deepen. The stretch is luxurious, satisfying, a reminder of the body's capacity for movement and flexibility, its resilience after periods of stillness. The arms lower again, and the candle maker rotates shoulders, first one direction and then the other, releasing tension, encouraging circulation, waking the body gradually and gently from its long rest. A few slow steps carry the candle maker away from the hearth, toward the center of the workshop. The floor is cool beneath the feet, and the air is cool against exposed skin, but not uncomfortably so. The coolness is refreshing, invigorating, helping to complete the transition from the deep rest to fuller wakefulness. The candle maker walks slowly around the workshop, not going anywhere in particular, simply moving, allowing the body to remember how to walk, how to balance, how to navigate space. The darkness is definitely lighter now, though still far from true visibility. It is the darkness of very early morning, the darkness that comes just before the first hints of dawn begin to appear. In this darkness, the densest shadows can be distinguished from slightly lighter areas. The windows are barely perceptible as rectangles of marginally less darkness against the dark walls. The outline of the work table can just barely be sensed, a bulky presence in the familiar location. The workshop is beginning to emerge from the absolute darkness, beginning to take on form and dimension again, though details remain hidden, though colors remain absent. The candle maker moves to where one of the lamps sits on the work table, finding it by memory and touch rather than by sight. The lamp is cool now, all trace of warmth long since dissipated. The candle maker's fingers find the smooth glass of the reservoir, the metal of the fitting, the wick that waits to be lit again. But not yet. Not quite yet. The darkness is appropriate for this moment, this transitional time between night and day. The lamp will be lit when the time is right, when the need for light becomes clear, when the darkness has finished its work and is ready to yield to illumination. Instead, the candle maker moves to the window and stands before it, looking out into the darkness beyond the glass. The night is still complete outside, still holding the world in its embrace, but there is a quality to it now that suggests change is coming, that the long reign of darkness is approaching its end. The stars, if they are visible, are beginning to fade slightly, not yet disappearing but losing some of their brilliance, their sharp definition against the blackness of space. The air outside has that particular quality that comes in the hour before dawn, a stillness that is different from the stillness of deep night, a quietness that waits rather than simply existing. The candle maker stands at the window for a long time, simply breathing, simply being present, watching the darkness outside as it imperceptibly begins to change. There is no impatience in this watching, no desire for dawn to hurry itself along. The darkness has been good, has provided what was needed, a time for deep rest, for profound stillness, for the journey into territories beyond ordinary consciousness. The darkness has held and protected and allowed. It deserves to be honored, to be acknowledged, to be released with gratitude rather than eagerness. And slowly, so slowly that it is almost impossible to say when it begins, the darkness outside starts to fade. It is not yet light, not even close to light, but the absolute blackness begins to soften, begins to take on the faintest tinge of deep blue-gray, the color that comes before color, the first suggestion that the sun exists somewhere beyond the horizon, that its light is beginning to reach out ahead of it, preparing the way for its return. The candle maker watches this transformation with quiet attention, with reverence even, for this is one of the profound moments, one of the transitions that marks the turning of the great cycles. Night is giving way to day. Darkness is yielding to light. Rest is making room for activity. And all of it happens so gradually, so smoothly, with such perfect timing and coordination, that it seems less like change and more like revelation, less like one thing ending and another beginning, and more like a single continuous process that includes both darkness and light, both rest and activity, both being and doing as parts of an inseparable whole. The workshop begins to emerge more clearly now as the darkness outside fades. The work table becomes more distinct, its shape and position more clearly defined. The shelves along the walls start to separate themselves from the shadows, their contents still indistinct, but their presence undeniable. The cabinet with the glass doors catches the faint pre-dawn light and reflects it back, a dull gleam that marks its location. The workshop is still dim, still shadowy, but it is no longer formless, no longer dissolved in absolute darkness. The candle maker turns from the window and moves back to the work table, hands reaching out to touch its surface, to confirm its solidity, its reality after the long hours in darkness when everything seemed to dissolve and merge. The wood is cool and smooth and undeniably present, and this presence is reassuring, grounding, a reminder that the physical world continues, that the objects and structures that support daily life remain constant and reliable even after journeys into the depths of consciousness and rest. The candle maker's hands find the lamp that was left on the work table, and now it feels right to light it, to add this small light to the growing illumination from the window, to participate in the return of light rather than merely witnessing it. The matches are where they always are, and the candle maker strikes one, the small sound sharp in the quiet, the sudden flare of light almost shocking after the long darkness. The match is brought to the lamp's wick, and the flame catches, grows, settles into its familiar steady glow. The lamp is lit, and its light spreads across the work table, casting familiar shadows, illuminating the clean surface, the orderly arrangement of tools, the empty molds waiting to be used again. The light is warm and golden, and it mingles with the cool blue-gray light that is beginning to seep through the windows, creating a combination that is neither day nor night, but something in between, a blending of artificial and natural light that marks this transitional time. The candle maker lights another lamp, and then another, moving slowly around the workshop, bringing each flame to life with the same care and attention that accompanied their extinguishing hours ago. With each lamp that is lit, the workshop becomes more fully itself again, more clearly visible, more completely present. The shadows retreat to the corners where they belong. The shapes of things become clear and distinct. Colors begin to return, muted still in the dim light but recognizable. The honey gold of beeswax, the dark grain of old wood, the dull gleam of metal tools. When 3 lamps are burning, casting their warm glow through the workshop, the candle maker pauses and looks around, seeing the space anew after the long hours of darkness and deep rest. Everything is as it was, unchanged and yet somehow different, refreshed by the rest, renewed by the darkness, ready to begin again. The work table waits for the day's work. The shelves hold their supplies in patient readiness. The hearth sits cold and clean, prepared to receive another fire when fire is needed. The workshop is ready, and the candle maker is ready, both rested and renewed by the night that is now ending. The light outside continues to grow, more quickly now, the pre-dawn giving way to the actual dawn, the first rays of sun still below the horizon but near, so near that their light reaches ahead of them, illuminating the sky, chasing away the last remnants of night. The blue-gray brightens toward blue. The darkness lifts like a curtain being slowly raised. The world beyond the windows begins to take on form and definition. The outline of buildings across the lane, the shape of the street, the branches of a distant tree, all emerging from darkness into visibility, from obscurity into clarity. The candle maker moves to the door of the workshop and opens it, feeling the rush of cool morning air, breathing in the freshness of the new day. The air smells of dew and stone, and the faint residue of smoke from last night's fires throughout the town. It is clean and crisp and invigorating, and the candle maker stands in the doorway for a moment, breathing deeply, allowing the morning air to fill the lungs, to complete the process of awakening and renewal. The sky is lighter now, brightening moment by moment, the blue deepening from gray blue toward true blue, the color of a clear morning sky, when the sun has not yet risen but is approaching, is near. The candle maker watches this brightening with the same quiet attention that witnessed the darkness throughout the night, honoring the light as the darkness was honored, receiving it as a gift as the darkness was received, finding peace in the transition as peace was found in the stillness. And then at the horizon, the first sliver of sun appears, a brilliant point of gold that seems impossibly bright after the long night. The light spreads rapidly now, no longer subtle or gradual but bold and insistent, reclaiming the world, illuminating everything, bringing color and clarity and the busy energy of day. The sun rises, unstoppable, inevitable, perfect in its timing, and the night is over, the darkness is ended, the time of rest has completed itself and given way to the time of activity. The candle maker stands in the doorway, silhouetted against the growing light, feeling the first warmth of the sun touch skin and hair, feeling the day begin. The night has been good, the rest has been deep, the journey through darkness has been profound and healing. Now it is time for something else, for work and movement and engagement with the world. But the peace remains, the stillness remains, the deep rest that was found in the darkness remains as a foundation, a ground, a place to return to when night comes again and rest is needed once more. The candle maker turns back into the workshop, leaving the door open to admit the morning air and light. The lamps still burn, but their light is less necessary now, less prominent, outshone by the natural light streaming through the windows and door. They will burn for a while longer, keeping company with the morning, and then they will be extinguished, their work done, their purpose fulfilled until evening comes again, and they are needed once more. The work table waits. The tools wait. The wax and wicks wait. Everything is ready for the day's work to begin whenever the candle maker is ready to begin it. But there is no hurry, no pressure, no urgency. The work will happen when it happens, at the right time, in the right way, with the same patience and care that characterizes all the work done here. For now, it is enough to stand in the workshop, to feel the light growing stronger, to breathe the morning air, to simply be present in this moment of transition, this threshold between night and day, between rest and work, between being and doing. The candle maker moves slowly through the workshop, adjusting a tool here, straightening a shelf there, small motions that are less about accomplishing anything and more about returning fully to the ordinary world, to the familiar patterns of daily life. The deep rest has been honored. The darkness has been traversed. The journey to the depths has been completed, and now the return to the surface continues, gentle and unhurried, allowing time for the transition to be complete, for the integration of the night's experience into the continuity of days and weeks and years. Outside, the sun continues its rise, climbing above the horizon, spreading its light across the town and the surrounding countryside. Birds begin to sing, their voices calling to each other, announcing the new day, celebrating the return of light. The sounds of the town beginning to wake begin to filter into the workshop, a door opening somewhere, footsteps on cobblestones, the distant call of someone greeting the morning. Life is resuming its ordinary patterns, its daily rhythms, and the workshop and the candle maker are part of this resumption, part of this return to activity and engagement. The candle maker stands once more at the work table, hands resting on its surface, feeling its steadiness, its faithfulness, its constant presence through night and day, through work and rest, through all the cycles that turn endlessly. The table has supported the night's rest just as it supports the day's work, asking nothing, giving everything, simply being what it is, a surface, a foundation, a place where transformation happens, where raw materials become useful objects, where attention and patience create value and beauty. A deep breath, and then another. The candle maker's eyes close briefly, and there is a moment of silence, of stillness, a final acknowledgement of the night that has passed and the day that is beginning. Then the eyes open again, and the candle maker's hands reach for the tools, for the materials, for the work that waits to be done. The night is over. The rest is complete. The day has begun. And in the workshop at the end of the quiet lane, as the sun rises higher and the light grows stronger, the candle maker returns to the work, to the familiar motions, to the patient craft of making light from wax and flame, continuing the ancient practice, honoring the tradition, creating something useful and beautiful that will carry light into someone else's darkness, that will provide warmth and comfort and peace to others seeking rest at the end of their own long days. The cycle continues. Night follows day, and day follows night. Rest follows work, and work follows rest. Darkness and light, stillness and movement, being and doing, all part of the same wholeness, all necessary, all valuable, all honored and embraced in their proper time. And the candle maker works on, slowly, patiently, peacefully, carrying forward the deep rest of the night into the gentle activity of the day, making candles with the same care and attention that allowed the night's profound rest, finding in the work the same peace that was found in the stillness, knowing that both are necessary, both are good, both are part of the beautiful rhythm of a life lived with presence and care and quiet devotion to simple, meaningful work. The workshop fills with light. The day unfolds. The work continues. And all is well. The end. May this story bring you deep rest and peaceful sleep. Candle,